Let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Salute pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. Almond, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Conley,
Here?
Mr. Emig,
Here.
Mr. Hogan,
Here.
Mr. Kindig,
Here.
Mr. McKinney,
Present.
Mrs. Meese. Here. Mrs. Miller. Here. Mrs. Whitmer.
Here.
Mr. Wolverton.
Here.
9 present.
Thank you, Mrs. Almond. Before we start on the agenda, I'd like to just read a prepared statement about the first agenda item. Despite what you may have heard or read on social media, this board has not yet submitted any proposals to strip funds or projects, courses, or activities from the 2024-25 budget. Not one. We are, however, asking lots of questions and giving our best to understand where we are spending money, why we're spending money, and where there are areas that can be trimmed without violating federal, state, or local requirements. So to be clear, the Dover Area School District is facing a projected $4 million deficit in next year's budget. As a result, both the board and the administration are exploring ways to reduce this deficit while continuing to deliver on our commitment to excellence in education. In tonight's presentation from the Chief Financial and Operations Officer, Mrs. Miranda Weaver, you will see and hear a number of scenarios that the administration has evaluated based on comments from previous board members in the last 3 years. Their purpose tonight is to present those evaluations. And I want to be clear in stating that these are not proposals that this board has yet suggested, requested, or recommended. Neither are they recommendations from the school administration. They are discussion points that we feel must be considered as a basic starting point in order for the board of directors to make a wise and informed decision this spring concerning next year's final budget. We know you realize the district school budget affects all of us, and it affects the entire community. And I can assure you that all resulting taxation is not a light matter for any of us. In fact, our responsibility in this matter weighs heavily upon each of us. I encourage you to tolerate this open debate without making unnecessary presumptions. As well, we encourage you to submit and or present your public comments to this board because we value that input from the community. So for the first agenda item, 2.01, the budget presentation, I'd like our CFO, Mrs. Miranda Weaver, to come present that.
Evening. At the January board meeting, we presented a $4.1 million deficit. So this is just a recap, as well as the items that were discussed that we brought today. We'd also like to recap on the next 2 slides all of the reductions made over the last 3 years to include 25 professional staff, 5 support staff, 4 administrative staff, and 18 stipend positions. Also included are approximately $1.6 million of reductions in building and department budgets for a total savings of over $5.1 million. These savings are outlined in the cost-saving measures document attached to the agenda. This is obviously is a look back, but I know that there's been some discussion and some concerns regarding the validity of $4 million loss that was included in many of the 21-22 budget presentations. Taking a look back approach with historical data, I was able to ascertain a similar loss value and to say the number was accurate. So now we're just going to take a snapshot look with charts and graphs at some of the district larger revenue expenditure line items. I'm happy to report that for 23-24 fiscal year, we have reduced the regular real estate tax budget to actual variations to 0.2% or $60,000. The previous last 5 years, variations have ranged from 210,000 to 746,000. The 23-24 budget was built with a 1.5% increase in taxable real estate along with a collection rate of 96.5. However, the collection rate came in at 96.6. Therefore, the collection rate for 24-25 has been adjusted accordingly. And as you can see, 24-25 is going to be the first year since 2021 that the tax revenue has gotten close to the pre-Washington Township loss, and that is due to a millage increase during 21-22 and 22-23. As a caveat, these assessment amounts are after the homestead-farmstead reduction. As you can see, Dover's taxable assessment base hasn't rebounded from the loss of Washington Township 3 years ago. At the rate that it is increasing, the baseline will not be reached into 26-26, 26-27, or 27-28 when the warehouses are finished. Reviewing the basic education subsidy trend, the increases have been relatively flat, averaging a little above 2% each year, but there is hope with the governor's proposed budget. Illustrated here, you can see the district's special ed costs far outweigh the subsidy received. Since 15-16, the percentage of revenue received to expense has decreased from 29 to 22%. Fortunately, EIT has rebounded since the loss of Washington Township. As many districts faced, cyber tuition has spiked since 2021. It has decreased slightly, but is still 40% higher than pre-pandemic years. As mentioned during my 23-24 budget to actual projections presentation, it is estimated that cyber charter tuition will be under budget during 23-24 due to an increase in student enrollment. I'm going to do a deep dive in the 23-24 calculations this week and will most likely come back in March with additional funding needed for the 24-25 budget. I'll look at our benefits analysis. As of the 22-23 actual results, the district's medical and prescription claims increased 41% in just 5 years, with anticipated claims in the next couple years to hit the 46% mark. Because of this increase in claims, the benefits advisor for LBT is recommending a 15% increase for 24-25 and a 13.6% increase for 25-26. As noted on the slide, the anticipated 23-24 actual results are approximately $1.17 million. For the last several years, the district has had billing issues with NRG for electricity. During 22-23, the district paid $89,000 in usage claims from 21-22 because of this. Therefore, the true 22-23 cost was $1.083 million. The district is diligent reviewing every invoice each month and reporting deficiencies in the bill to the senior account executive from NRG assigned to Dover. The district has also seen significant double-digit increases in per kilowatt and per volume for gas during 23-24, which is reflected in the 24-25 budget. Due to the favorable interest rates over the last couple years, there was a decline in the PSERS rate. However, projections over the next several years are still climbing. This slide demonstrates the cost of the district, which is based on salaries. Outlined are changes since the January presentation. There are 4 services that will be allocated to the PCCD grant. We have adjusted the cyber software cost downward to be applicable with student enrollment and current payments. There has also been a decrease in salary and benefits based on retirement and resignation savings. The regular real estate tax collection rate for 24-25 has been adjusted to reflect the last 2 years of history, and EIT and interest of 23-24. As presented in January, there are 4 options to assist. Now, there were 3 options in January. However, I broke out the expenditure savings and the revenue enhancement because it was just budget savings. These, as was stated earlier, and I will state it again, these are not administration's recommendations. These are merely just topics that were presented in previous years. Enacting the walking boundaries. According to school code, districts are not required to provide transportation except for along hazardous walking routes and to special needs students. This allows the elimination of 1 minibus and 172 passenger bus. Attached to the board agenda is a document containing the methodology and reasoning behind the estimated $106,000 created by the transportation coordinator and EMB. The next several slides contain salary and benefit reductions due to unfilled positions, which includes reduction of the SOAR classroom teacher, reductions of one specialist teacher at the middle school, reduction of one district floating nurse. Again, I must state, this is not administration's recommendation, but it has been presented in previous years, is the SRO. The district has struggled to fill the open positions for the last several years, which is why Gridiron is utilized. Obviously, with the reduction of this would decrease the amount of cleaning that was done on an everyday basis. The cost savings included in the junior high sports includes coaching salaries, benefits, supplies, uniforms, transportation, and PIAA. The phase-in amounts as outlined in my April 23 budget presentation have been included as a reduction to the debt budget since 1920. However, funds were never withdrawn due to the actual results being better than budgeted. We have one revenue enhancement. There's a lot of information on that slide. The district has built up an access reserve over the last several years because of the cost settlement funding has been larger than the requested withdrawal. Due to this, there's money available to assist with the budgetary gap. I provided various strategies to paint a picture of the availability. The one takeaway to think about was with the impact on the budget once the reserves are used and level funded takes place. Access is a very complicated topic, so to try to simplify it, the district receives its revenue regardless. These scenarios just provide you with ideas of how to utilize the current reserves to close the budget gap. Fund balance. Based on the 21-22 York County fund balances obtained from PDE, it is fair to say that the district has a very healthy fund balance at 20%, which includes committed, assigned, and unassigned. The average of York County is 18, with a low of 3 and a high of 40. There are only 5 schools in York County with a larger fund balance to expenditure ratio. A smoothing out reduction approach was taken to reduce material swings from year to year. This methodology was also discussed by Mr. Seldenbridge last year. Real estate millage. Outlined are the anticipated revenue amounts, starting with no increase up to 4% increase. It includes a 1.5% taxable assessment increase and a 96.6% collection rate. This demonstrates the impact on various taxable assessments. Please keep in mind, market value is very different from taxable value. In short, assessed value is the home's value that comes tax time, while fair market value is the cost to buy a home in that area. Things to continue to monitor. I watched the governor's presentation on the 6th. I attended a webinar held by PASBO yesterday with regards to the interpretation of the budget and what was presented. We're going to continue to monitor basic ed funding. Historically, they want to put back in the adequacy, which could give us an additional $1.26 million if that does take place. There also is an additional $50 million proposed for special ed and additional money that's for career and technical education. And again, establishing a statewide cyber tuition. The cyber tuition is something that has been tossed around in previous years, and there are several different legislative iterations regarding this calculation. This concludes my presentation. At this time, we would like to solicit feedback on the options presented tonight or other options you would like the administration to explore and be presented in March. We welcome a collaborative discussion as we continue to shape the budget with feedback and options you would like to see presented.
Okay, you could just remain at the podium for a minute. Just open up period of questions from the board. Mrs. Weaver.
Yeah, I have one. Yeah. Aside from the just availability of funds, if we would do a drawdown on the reserve, are there any other ramifications such as affecting our borrowing rate, interest rates?
When you say reserve, you mean fund balance, not access.
Correct.
We do have a very healthy fund balance, so at this point in time, no, there would not be any ramifications with regards to that.
our revenue would be affected, from the interest, right?
Yes, it would be to some degree, yes.
What's our average percent?
5.2 to 5.3.
So if we take $1 million out, then the next school year, our revenue drops by that.
Yes, I mean, yes, if you wanted to figure out the interest rate based off of that, and if the interest rates stayed as high as they are.
So based on, back to the slide about the millage scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
So if we were to increase a full 4%, we're still not even halfway to reducing that deficit. We only go up to $1.7 million worth of revenue.
I mean, we could go higher. We could go up to the adjusted index. I just didn't put that on the slide, but I could certainly do that for next time if that's something that the board would like.
So a 4% increase doesn't even get us halfway to the deficit that we're facing.
Well, the new adjusted deficit of 3.4, it does. I mean, it gets us halfway.
Okay, all right. How much are we looking to get from the solar farms? How much revenue are we looking to receive from them?
When I spoke to the Planning Commission, they didn't have any estimates as of right now. However, what he did told me, which I thought was very interesting and I didn't realize, is because they are movable fixtures, you do not get any revenue off of the actual panels. It's only off of the land. So it's not going to be quite as much as I'm sure people are anticipating.
And one of the solar farms has been canceled.
So there's initial windfall people have been talking about that the municipalities may get. So what does that windfall look like with the initial fees that are submitted for this?
I'm sorry, what is a windfall?
Well, I mean, when they implement these, there's supposed to be some money coming that's going to be more than the residual tax income over time. Can you enlighten us on how revenue is going to come from solar farms to us? I can see the look on your face.
I can't because when I spoke with the Planning Commission, the director, he didn't give me any information because he at the time, I guess, didn't have any information, so I can't speak to it.
Okay, so we really don't know what, if any, revenue we might get from the solar farms?
No, not at this point, we don't.
Okay.
How about the warehouses?
The warehouses, yes, we're looking at about, if it's I think he said 200 acres, 500 million an acre. I mean, we're looking at a significant amount of money, over $2 million when they do come online.
What was that figure again?
About approximately over $2 million.
$2 million annually?
Yes.
Right.
That's based on the Planning Commission and what his estimates were, and I'm sure he's pretty accurate.
And what's the projections on when we'll see the first of that?
26, 27, possibly, or 27, 28, but I think he did say he thought most of the projects were coming online in 26, for 26, 27.
Any other questions?
I had sent over some notes from a webinar from the state on the, that was on the
PCCD
safety
grant.
security grants, and there's also some behavioral grants out there. Are there any opportunities we could take advantage of for those?
We already are. Yeah, we're already working on that. There is a document that's going to be distributed with all the PCCD grants that have been awarded to the district over the last several years.
That's great. Yeah, this sounded like a new one that's coming along.
It's where we're still working on it. Yes.
Great.
Yep.
Thank you.
Can you explain how special ed students, there's much more cost for them, correct?
When you say special, you mean how much it costs to educate them here or how much it costs for a cyber charter?
Well, and that's both what I wanted to talk about. Like at cyber, is it based on their actual needs? Like a speech student receives those services when they go to a charter school or a cyber school?
It's not. It's a very basic calculation, and it's based on our budget. And every district pays a different amount. It's all based on your budget. So I don't want to say it's arbitrary, but it doesn't really have an impact on it. It doesn't reference what type of student needs they have.
I believe it doesn't matter what kind of IEP or what the reason for the IEP is, the fee is the same.
Okay, that was.
That
my
is correct.
question.
Yes, it is one. It's one fee for all special ed
Okay,
students.
thank you. That's what I wasn't sure about.
there's a lot of, I guess I could put it this way safely, that there's some unpopular options in some of the scenarios that you ran. With a $3.4 million deficit, adjusted now. What's your recommendation for the best pathway forward?
We're, administration's looking for some guidance from the board as to what we would like to see in the next presentation, what I presented that you don't want to see again, or if you have other suggestions you'd like to see presented in March.
Okay, we will give you that. A lot of these things is, for the board and, for the members of the public that are here, everyone knows half of the board is brand new. We're new to this business. And as we delve into the budget, it's extremely complex. We got a lot of respect for the job that you do, Mrs. Weaver. And I know that there's already been some cost savings, that the administration has already implemented. So a lot of it for us is knowing how to ask the right questions, and the less you know how to, ask the right questions. So we're going to ask for some assistance in that area, and as well from the public. If you got ideas for how we can make cuts to make this work out, we would like that. We certainly don't want to create adverse impact just because we're mean people. We don't want to do that. We'd like to have as little impact as possible on the school and on the public, while at the same time respecting those who do not wish to see taxes raised again, which is a nearly annual event. So is there any further questions from the board for Mrs. Weaver? Director Meese.
As far as the claims benefit, the benefit claims analysis, so it was up, then it went down, and then it went back up again year over year, 500,000 last year compared to this year. Is there any way we can, are we implementing any strategy, like a 5-year plan on how to decrease our claims? I mean, because I would assume that goes up, then do we renew our insurance every year?
We are quasi self-funded with LBT,
Okay.
so we are our hands are tied with some of the changes that we can make.
Do our insurance premiums go up as our claims go up? Is that analyzed every year?
That's analyzed by LBT, I believe, on a monthly basis, actually.
Monthly?
Yes, Conrad Siegel is a benefits advisor.
And the reason why I asked that is because I was on the board of the York County School of Technology, and we were seeing claims, benefit claims going up significantly year over year went up. And then they introduced some type of, I don't know exactly what they did, but it really brought claims down significantly, significantly impacted. But I don't know what steps they took. I don't know if maybe you guys could reach out to them to find out. Do you know what yes? No?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Christina, do you want to talk about some of this?
I mean, I don't know if there's I don't know if online nursing, using more of an online versus office visits could help with that, or
So a lot,
education.
there are
resources.
different options we can do. A lot of it is plan design, and we're contractual obligated with the contracts that we currently have with what those plan designs are.
Sure.
It could be increase in deductible, it could be increase in out-of-pocket, co-pays, things like that. It's your premium share. Those are all the things that, not sure what York Tech did. We could certainly reach out to them,
Yeah,
but they may have had a new contract, which changes the plan design.
No, they implemented some type of education, to the staff, to the people that were getting the benefits on how to use the online tools instead of going to office visits, prescriptions, using
Different
yeah,
services for
right,
whatever.
Yeah,
What is-
and maybe if we educate our population a little bit more on these other.
What is driving your claims the last 3 years is we have a number of high dollar claims. We have a number of staff members who have spouses and dependents that have had some significant health crises.
Okay.
And so there's a lot we can do. Wellness is really important, and all of
Yeah.
that is really important.
Right.
But a lot of it is we have had the most number of high dollar claims in the last 2 years than in my 7 years here. So, some of
course,
that.
There's no way to anticipate.
You
what that's
can't,
gonna
you
be.
can't, you would never know. But that's what drives, and that's what's so hard to predict or budget for benefits is that you can do the wellness and you can change the plan design. But if you unfortunately have a number of high dollar claims, it's just going to unfortunately increase it, and you can't predict that year over year. But there are definitely things we can do, and we're partnering with LBT and Highmark to implement some of those things.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
I have a question, and I don't know if anybody in the staff, I don't know who could answer it. In regards to the gridiron cleaning,
Mhm.
they come in every day?
Tom, do you
Is
want to
that
answer?
correct? Oh, okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, they do come in on a regular basis. I don't know that it would be every day, but they fill our vacant positions that we have open. So positions we don't have filled, they fill in at different schools for those positions.
So we have some of our own staff and then
Mhm.
them as well.
Absolutely, they work right beside them. So if we have a vacant position here at Dover Elementary, they would fill in for those hours there.
Okay. So my ultimate question is, and I don't know if you can answer this because there's a lot of you that are new, just like me, but before COVID, what did the cleaning process look like? Does anybody know if it looks very much different still?
I
Compared-
can't speak on that because I wasn't here.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
wondering if, Christine?
Sure.
Okay.
Stay up there. Our cleaning process, I think, my opinion is, our cleaning process has gone back to our normal cleaning as it was pre-COVID.
Okay.
So when we had COVID, we even brought in additional day people to just go down through, wipe off knobs and faucets and different things like that. So I believe our cleaning has gone back to, Ms. Brown has taken it back to where it was pre-COVID. The challenge you have now is staffing. So the reason Gridiron was brought in is because we can't fill our positions now. Our goal would be not to use Gridiron, it would be used to use our own employees, but we just can't staff the positions. So when you have an elementary school that may be down 1 or 2 night custodians, we have to bring in a third-party service, or we'd have to move other staff around, which means another building is short as well. So really, Gridiron was brought in just because we can't staff. We can't find people that want to work in the positions. And it continues, that's in many positions post-COVID, as we've really struggled with some of our support staff staffing.
Who can I ask some more questions to, like email some more questions to about our cleaning protocol and like all those things
That
going
would
on?
be
You.
Mr. Fluke.
All right, thank you.
Let me ask a question. Is it more efficient for us to have a contract cleaning or custodial staff?
Yeah. It's all you, Tom.
For pure cost, the cost per hour to have a Gridiron person come in is, the last I checked, it's a high 20s, low 30s dollars per hour. So no, it's a lot more efficient to have staff that is employed by the district to clean the buildings. It's a lot more cost effective.
So that's just their pay, but you have other forms of compensation and benefits that those employees receive. Is it still considering all of that more expensive?
I believe so, yes. We could dive into that more. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it is.
All right.
Yeah, it is. So yeah, it's normally across anything in a school district. If you can do it in-house, it is ultimately much, much, much cheaper.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Well, yeah, I have a couple actually.
Go ahead, Director McKinney.
Along with what you were just talking about, would it be prudent to maybe offer more per hour for those kind of positions to attract candidates and still come out ahead of?
Ultimately, yes, more money will attract more people, I think, but that's going to affect the budget too. If you increase salaries, it's going to have a direct effect on the budget then.
Yeah, but we can, as with cleaning or any other contracted services, if we could bring more in-house,
Yes.
that would be
It will save a tremendous amount of money. Yeah,
Right.
it doesn't matter whether we're cleaning schools or plowing snow. If we can do it in-house, it saves a lot of money. And just kind of as an hour breakdown, right now per week, we're 200 hours short in the district in custodial services.
So
Thank you.
I'm guessing those salaries, that's probably for her, is, it's probably already negotiated in the contract.
So yes, I just wanted to make, not that we couldn't reopen and renegotiate, and that would probably be more of a Ben question, but all of our wages are set through the end of next year. So they will be up for negotiation for 25, 26 and on, but for next year, they're fixed, at least what we have currently in the contract. So that would mean we'd have to renegotiate them, but I would be for increasing wages.
Thank you. And my other question should be for you, but Rena, be ready. With the ESSERS, the ESSERS funding and the COVID era funding expiring and going away,
Yes.
are there any programs or staffing or services that we've added with those funds that we may need to strip back away?
That would definitely be a Rena question. That would definitely be a Rena question.
I mean, is everything we added essential that we have to continue without the ESSER funding?
Well, first of all, keep in mind that I did not write ESSERS 1 and 2. I only wrote ESSERS 3.
Yep.
However, after investigating all of it, what was really helpful about ESSERS is that we were allowed to use it to supplant. That means somebody that was already in our budget, that's been our employee for years, we were allowed to use that money to pay their salary. That's not true for federal programs for Titles 1, 2, 3, and 4. You can't do that. So, for instance, if we have a business manager that we already have, we couldn't use that money to pay for that salary, but we can for ESSERS. So fortunately, both the prior administration and the current administration were very careful about not adding a program or a position or anything with ESSERS that we wouldn't be able to maintain.
Okay.
So the only positions that we are recommending that we maintain were those that were here years before ESSERS, but we just use ESSERS to pay for them.
So basically, they'll go back into the general budget. We pulled them out of the general budget lines with the ESSERS funding, and then we'll just return them back to the general
Correct.
budget.
There are a few purchases that we made that were special because of ESSERS. If you recall, there's a lot of rules for ESSERS, a lot of money that had to be spent on mental health and social emotional learning. The vast majority of those we are planning to discontinue once the grant money runs out, or if we can apply it to a different grant.
Okay.
But some of them will not be going back to
That was the main
the
thing
general
I was
budget.
looking for.
And then, of course, there were a lot of one-time purchases that were made, like supplies that you don't have to continue to buy. You just buy them once and now you have them.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Director McKinney, we asked that question a week or two ago via email, and the district supplied us with charts and things. So
Okay.
if you don't have them, I can share them with you at some
Okay.
point.
I think I did see the email, just haven't read through that one yet.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mrs. Weaver. All right, we had an executive session right before this meeting to discuss or to receive a briefing from the solicitor on a legal matter. Our next, actually, skipped the public comment period, conveniently, right? The public comment period is open now. The board uses the public comment period as an opportunity to listen, but not to debate issues or enter into a question and answer session with the speaker. Public comment must be germane to the school district business. The board values civil, respectful statements and clear and concise communication that help to inform its deliberations. You'll have 3 minutes during this comment period. If you don't finish your comments, you'll have an opportunity for another public comment at the end of the meeting where you'll have 2 minutes there. So we open the floor for public comments. Does anybody have any? When you approach the podium, just please state your name. If your address is not on the sign-in sheet, you can either state that or make sure it's included on the sign-in sheet.
Kara Hetrick, 2554 Danielle Drive. Sorry. Good evening. There's a few topics I'd like to talk about. First, the iPads. It is the norm for all students to be using technology in school in 2024. To give you an idea of what's happening in other local districts, I did a little survey. West York, Northeastern, Hanover, Southwestern, and New Oxford give each of their students in kindergarten from kindergarten to grade 12 Chromebooks. Spring Grove gives all their students iPads like we do. Central, Dallastown, West Shore, and Cumberland Valley do a mix of iPads and Chromebooks. Just wanted to share that. In regards to the budget, an earned income tax for working families, which was discussed at a previous meeting, sounds worse than just increasing the millage. According to the budget proposal we heard tonight, if you increase the millage by just 1%, that would translate into a tax increase of about $49 more per year for a homeowner with an assessed home value of $200,000. And then that would result in an additional over $800,000 in revenue. No one wants to see their taxes go up, but I think many families would rather pay $49 more per year than see some of the other tax cuts that are proposed. And that would surely be less than an earned income tax on families and working families would be. Also, I am in favor, and my family's in favor of using some of the fund balance money, as also was discussed tonight. In previous meetings, the board has mentioned concern for our fixed income residents. One idea that would be really helpful to those individuals is to put a link on the district website or send letters to inform them on how to apply for the PA property tax rebate. We could even host an event here in one of our schools to help those residents apply online. The last issue I'd like to speak to is in regards to the agenda item tonight that's on the agenda regarding the Independence Law Center. Given Dover's history, it is very concerning that our board is considering entering into an agreement with this group. In 2004, the Dover School Board attempted to include the religious teachings of creationism in our science classes. A group of parents sued the district and won, as the judge declared it was unconstitutional to advance a particular religious belief in public schools. During this time, the Dover School Board received advice from the Thomas More Law Center, a pro bono group who at the time was approaching various school boards around the country in an attempt to further its agenda. In Kitzmiller v. Dover, that trial proved extremely costly, as well as it was a highly dividing issue in our community. I was here, I remember it. I remember the signs, I remember the fighting, it was awful. To think that just 20 years later, our board is again considering consulting a religious-based law firm is unbelievable. Just like the Thomas More Law Center, the Independence Law Center is approaching school districts around the state offering pro bono work. But what happens when their religious-based recommendations are unconstitutional and parents decide to sue the district? Will the Independence Law Center pay for all of Dover's legal fees?
Your time is up.
Can I finish one more sentence?
One more sentence.
Thank you. The Thomas More Center did not pay our fees, and I doubt the Independence Law Center would pay ours. We already are facing a budget deficit and have so many real issues to deal with. Contracting with this group will bring additional chaos, division, and threats of lawsuits. I urge the board to consider the ramifications of hiring this group. Thank you for letting me finish.
Thank you, Ms. Hutchins. Okay, next.
Hi, good evening. My name is Shannon DePato, and I reside at 3034 Jody Lane. There are a few topics that I would like to discuss this evening, hopefully quickly. I want to first discuss the safety of our students and staff, not only at Live, but in all of our buildings. It is my understanding that in recent conversations, there have been discussion to cut our SROs visiting our buildings on a daily basis. This school year has been very concerning as we have had to have our SROs respond to numerous situations based on severe behaviors occurring by some of our students at Live. Not only are they making sure that those students do not act in a manner that can severely affect others, but they are also responding when there are parental or caregiver issues. We rely heavily on our SROs to respond to situations that our staff aren't able to assist with due to their restrictions, which, by the way, could be a lot quicker than calling 911. According to the U.S. News and World Report, between 2018 and 2023, more than 1,200 school shooting incidents occurred in the U.S., resulting in more than 1,000 victims for a rate of about 0.85 victims per incident. These situations cannot be ignored, nor can we think it would ever happen here. As part of my role at Penn State Children's Hospital, where I've worked for nearly 20 years, I work very closely with local police departments, including SROs and the state police, to teach Run, Hide, Fight, as well as Stop the Bleed, that are nationally ranked programs to train staff. These are not easy topics to discuss nor teach, but it is essential that we utilize our local officers, provide this education to our staff to keep everyone safe. Along with this education and knowledge, we continue to provide immediate response through the use of our SROs in our buildings. Dover Area School District strives and lives by every student, every day, whatever it takes. Again, whatever it takes. The only way we can make this happen is to provide an educational institution that is not run like a business, that is safe for our students and staff. Our families and our community expect our schools to be a safe place for our children. We are not invincible, and the thought of losing our SROs to help balance our budget is the last thing that needs to be considered. So far in 2024, there have been 4 incidences of school shootings, and we're only 44 days into the new year. This is unacceptable, and in order to continue and keep our buildings safe, we must keep our SROs on staff so they have the ability to respond quickly. Not only do our SROs keep our buildings safe, but it's also the opportunity to build a strong relationship with local law enforcement. Our students need positive role models in our lives, and as this has been proven to build confidence and trust in others. I also want to remind you of the incident that occurred at our own high school the first week of school of a potential threat requiring the immediate response of Northern New York Regional Police Department, who did an amazing job to secure the building and evacuating our students and staff. Only because Officer Schaefer was in the building at the time was the situation able to be secured so quickly. 14 seconds. God, that goes fast. I'm not going to get to my last subject. I'll do that later. In conclusion, I was going to talk about the ESSER funds that we feel need to be spent immediately. These 2 topics are very near and dear to my heart, and I really hope that you all take the time to do your research, spend quality time in our buildings to see firsthand what is happening, and understand that you have the ability to make Dover Area School District a place that families feel they can trust the decisions being made are in the best interest of our children and staff. Thank you. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Mrs. DePato. Anyone else?
I agree with all the ladies. $49
You
is
please
nothing.
State your name.
My name's Amanda Keister, and I live at 39 West Canal Street. And $49 is nothing. Well, you can sacrifice a drink, a couple days a week to have our kids safe, because we need our kids safe. We don't live in 1950 anymore. It's 2024. It's very important. And life is I had a house fire. Life is very precious. So please take that into consideration. 25 years ago, Red Lion had a shooting and the superintendent got shot and killed. So please remember, because if something would happen to my kids, I would sue you guys, and I mean it. And if there's no cops around. And that's a promise.
Thank you, Mrs. Keister. Anyone else?
Hi, Justin Tate, 2640 Wingate Road. I'd like to thank you guys for the way you've handled this tonight. I think you guys are all trying to take the right approach to this. As a teacher, I'm at Northeastern, but and a parent, I know that it's not easy to make decisions that are going to affect taxpayers, students, teachers, everybody. Although I do think that one of the worst things that we could do is cut more teachers, because they have the most impact on students on a daily basis. If teachers are cut, there's already a negative atmosphere along with some teachers right now. I know some people that have quit because they just are burnt out already. If we're cutting more teachers, there's going to be more students in classes, and it's just going to make things more difficult for the teachers that we do have and for the students to get the education that they deserve. So it's easy for me to say that I think, we can consider the whole walking to school thing and some of those other simpler things. At least it seems easy to think of it as simpler to me. But again, I think the more students have access to teachers that care and can keep the class sizes down, that's the thing that we have to consider the most. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tate. Anyone else? I'll do a last call. Anyone else like to make a public comment? Well, I'd like to thank you for coming, presenting the public comments, and for attending tonight. It does make a difference to us what you think and how you feel about the issues. All right, our next agenda item is 5.01, addition to the list of Dover High School early graduates. Okay. Dr. Cartwright, would you like to touch on why we're doing this?
I'd love to. Last month, we approved a fairly significant list, and we forgot one student, and that's the name you see.
Okay, thank you. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none, let's go to agenda item 5.02, the Sound Masters Entertainment contract for Dover. This is a DJ for the photo booth and at the 4.5 hours of music at one of our events. So who can brief us on this? Dr. Cartwright?
This is the DJ and a photo booth for the prom
Okay.
for $1,700. And no district funds are used for prom. Fees are paid by fundraising.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Have they done this before? Have we had this group before do prom? Anybody know?
Each junior class does their own finding a venue, finding a DJ, and what their food sources are. So it is possible that we've used this before, but I don't believe this is the one that we have used in the past 2 years.
I just know how important that music is, so I can.
That's why we let our students make that decision, because they're the only ones they can blame.
Right.
Is the junior class also doing the fundraising? Who does the fundraising?
Junior class, all the students always do the fundraising for all of the things going through. They have different accounts, but junior class is always responsible for prom.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Fasek. All right, is there any further questions? All right, agenda item 5.03, the field trip request, and we have 5 field trip requests, and I'll refer to Dr. Cartwright for these. Field trip request to Dover High School, Skills USA, State Officer Candidate, and Head Delegates Training in Altoona, Pennsylvania.
I think Mr. Benton can talk to this topic better than I.
Good evening. Yeah, for this field trip, we have a student that will be a candidate for state officer. So there's always a pre-training for them to know the correct process to go when they go to states. That's when they will be voted on and going through the whole process. So we do have a state officer, current state officer in Skills USA, which is drawing a lot of attention and creating leadership opportunities for more students that are younger to step up for their senior year. So we actually have one student that's going to apply and is in a candidate situation, but he has to attend this training to be able to go through the process.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you. Is there any discussion or questions from the board? Okay, we'll go to the next one. Field trip request, Dover High School Jazz to travel to Central Dauphin High School.
The next 3 are all music. They're all typical routine music trips that our groups take. If you have specific questions, I think Mrs. Fasek can probably answer them.
Okay, does the board have any questions on this or the next couple of items? Okay. Yes, Director Whitman.
I think I have some questions. I just want to understand more about their signups for the places that they go. So is this a typical process for all schools? Like those who have the jazz ensembles, like they attend these certain events yearly
So
and it's a regional thing?
PMEA starts with, and I'll try to put them in the right order, but PMEA starts with students that qualify and they go to counties, and some of them are a little bit different, districts, regionals, and the whole point is to make it to states. So if you think about it like American Idol, and they go in, all of them are available to possibly make it, and then it keeps going through round after round after round as they go to these different places to make it to the elite group. And right now for jazz, we have one student that has made it to states. It started with a group of about 8 or 9, and where one made it, which is a huge honor, especially for our small district.
So state's their last round?
State's their last round.
Okay.
As far as I am aware, because we have not had anybody go past states since I have been here. And they all budget this. This is a line item budget that goes into our budget every year to account. Sometimes we use all of the funds that are in there. Sometimes we don't because we don't have students. Last year, we were almost out of funds because we had 3 students make it to states in the jazz. So it does depend on what our students are able to do, but we try to budget for it the best that we are able to do so, because the state competition last year was at Kalahari. This year it's at Erie. It caused the cost of transportation and then the venue that they pick, like Kalahari, was very, very expensive. And that's PMEA who does it compared to going to Erie.
So the first item, 5.04, is a 1 student, and then the others are?
The state conference I have wrong glasses on. In Erie, that's 1 student. The jazz band, jazz choir are multiple students. That is a festival that is held by Mansfield that we attend every year. Again, it is something that we budget for every year because it is an opportunity for our students to go hear instruction and work with other musicians. I tend to think that why we have students making it for some of these jazz to states is because we participate in things like the Mansfield University Festival. The third, I think there's just the 2. The central one for high school jazz. So that is about 7 or 8 students, I believe, that are going to that one. And we travel in district vans for that rather than taking whole bus we try to keep the costs as minimal as possible. But part of PMEA, it is overnight. They house the students, and that's part of their plan as they put it together.
Thank you.
Okay, and I saved is there any other questions for that? Okay, now, the one to Anaheim, California, and let me look at which one this is. So that's 5.07. So this is the DECA trip. Dr. Cartwright, can you talk about that one?
Mr. Benton would love to do that.
Hello. Yes, our international DECA competition. So right now we have our managers from our school store that has qualified based on their school-based enterprise where they've won state. They've already been notified to go to that. So right now there's 3 students. Next week, Wednesday through Friday is our state competition. Based off of the 20-some students going, we may have more students that qualify. So if they win at states, they will go on to the international competition. DECA is the only one of our CTSOs. The other 2 do national competition. DECA does international, so they will be competing on business plans, competitions with international students. It is rotated between the regions in the U.S., from East, Central, and West. This year is our most expensive one because it's to Anaheim and it's the flight cost to go to that.
And this is at Disneyland, I'm assuming?
Outside of it, yes.
Just right outside of Disneyland. Okay.
Outside, yes.
So we have at least 3 students. So
we could have more. We won't know till next Friday.
So we were asking some questions early on. So the substitute fees will be determined by which teachers are going. So that's
correct.
I'm sorry, that number there kind of becomes fixed. The travel and transportation lodging on the form here, that's per student. So what's the maximum amount that you think this trip is going to cost? Say if we have
Honestly, I
policy?
don't know until we actually know the total number of students, because then we will work with our flights, what time of flights to arrange the cheapest flights as possible, and to how many students, whether they're male, female, how many hotel rooms we actually need. We try two males to a room, two females to the room. It just depends on the mix of sex with the students going on how many hotel rooms that we need. So we try to pair up as much as we can. So I don't have that till we have our total number, but we always work to keep it as the least expensive as possible.
So we could have minimum 3, we know.
Mhm.
It could be 20. Could it be 20?
It could be somewhere from 3 to probably 12, 15.
So, and we're talking per student, probably $3,200 a piece.
Correct.
So that's what we're looking at. Okay. Any questions on this item?
I see on the form here for lodging, travel, and transportation, student, district, and fundraiser are all marked. What's the breakdown of what the district would pay versus student?
The students all have started fundraising back in the fall to go through to get them to states and to the international competitions. All right. So the district funds are some of our Perkins grants, because the Perkins grant does pay for the registration for those students. All right. And the district would be for the substitute fees. Okay. Which is budgeted and is actually helped covered by some of our reimbursement back from CTE. Okay.
So are we talking about, I mean, if we have a lot of folks that qualify, this could potentially be a $35,000 trip? Or more,
Potentially.
or maybe more. Could be
Potentially, yeah. And it's all being raised by the organization, by the students fundraising within the organization.
Okay, so essentially what you're saying there is it will cost the district nothing if they raise enough money. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay.
The only thing that we're paying for is actually the teachers to go
Right.
to be the chaperones.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Is there any further questions on this? You're hearing none.
No,
Thank you, Mr. Batten. All right, next one is 5.08, the postseason athletic extracurricular contest request. Dr. Cartwright.
This is for the swim team in the event they make the competition. That is yet to be determined, but the dates are such that they fall before the next board meeting. So this trip needs to be approved before March 12th and 13th, the dates of the competition. They may or may not attend, but I'm guessing they will because they're good.
And none of this is covered by fundraising, is it?
This is likely in the athletic budget. I am pulling up the form as we speak. District pays for all of it.
Okay. Any questions on this item?
Will they qualify before our voting meeting next week? Not that I'm going to vote against it.
I don't know when we actually find out if they qualify.
Okay.
I'm not real sure.
Any further questions? All right, the next item is 5.09, conference request, Kelly Renard, Director of School Nutritional Services in Seven Springs, Pennsylvania.
Yes, this is a conference that would be funded out of the nutrition fund, and that is a separate fund from our district's general account, general fund, completely separate, all out of school nutrition.
Okay, any questions? Is this a required course or a required conference?
It does not say that it's required, and I don't know that it is. I think it's probably a very good idea that she go, since it's for the directors.
Right. Any questions from the board? Okay, next item would be 5.10, conference request, Haley Bowser, middle school music teacher, band director to attend the 2024 PMEA annual conference in Erie, and that's connected with the other request that we had?
It
Dr.
is
Cartwright?
connected, and she is not asking for lodging. She is only asking for the registration fee and the food allowance, which is a total of $265. And the middle school budget has that available for her.
So, why is she not asking for lodging? She have,
She must have a friend who lives there. I didn't ask that question.
the reason I ask that is I don't want people to feel guilty about spending money that they probably are warranted to spend. If they're going somewhere, they deserve to stay somewhere.
Well, if you look at the other trip to Erie with our music group, she may have a room to stay in.
Okay. Any questions concerning this item, 5.10? All right, the next item is agenda item 5.11, payment of employee auto insurance deductible. Dr. Cartwright.
Yes, you'll see under public content all of the information that you need to know about this. We have an employee in the maintenance department who was driving a personal vehicle for work-related business, got in a minor fender bender, and is asking for the district to pay the deductible. The reason the employee was driving the personal vehicle is because the district does not have enough vehicles for all the members of the maintenance department to drive a district-owned vehicle.
Okay, any questions?
If we've had incidents like this in the past, is that how we've handled it?
We have not had an incident like this since I've been here in 3 years.
That's good.
Solicitor Pratt, do we have any liability concerned in handling this matter in this way as a district?
Not that I can think of, just being just brought to my attention at this point in time. No, nothing.
Okay.
I don't know what liability you would have in this matter based on this request.
Okay. Do we have any liability concerning personal or use of a personal vehicle for school business?
You have liability concerns of them using any vehicle, but I mean, they're personal, but they're working for you and at that point in time, but it would be based on anything else with anyone using any other vehicle. You have workers' comp issues, you have you have damage issues, all of those things that go along with it. Remember, and we've talked about this before, you are protected under the Political Subdivision Towards Claim Act for certain things, but you still have some liability concerns when individuals are using their personal vehicle for school district work versus, such as this, meaning that you're being requested to pay for their deductible because it's their vehicle, unlike it being your vehicle if they were driving your vehicle and damage occurred with your vehicle.
Okay. This question is for Dr. Cartwright. So in this matter, and we don't want to talk about the individual person, but is the employee being required to use their personal vehicle, or are they offering to use their personal vehicle?
In order to do the work that needed to be done, the personal vehicle had to be driven because we don't have enough vehicles for all employees in the maintenance department to drive a district-owned vehicle.
Right, okay.
So it was a choice to do the work and drive the personal vehicle.
Right, okay. Any questions from the board?
Do we have any kind of
Me?
policies in
Oh,
place?
I'm sorry, Director
sorry, go
Meese, and
ahead.
then we'll. Okay.
Do we have any kind of policies in place where when there is an incident of any kind, whether they're driving a district vehicle or a personal vehicle, is there any kind of testing done? Any kind of drug testing or any kind of checking of the vehicle records?
So the only time, well, I mean, that's like a law school question. It's one question, 25 parts. The situation is this: under federal law, if an individual is, let's say, a bus driver, if they're in any accident, they are required to have testing at that point in time. Any other situations, just like any other, based on your policy, and again, I don't know the policy verbatim, but there could be reasonable suspicion. But I'm not familiar with what that policy would be, but again, that's in any scenario with accidents. But there are certain requirements under federal law and under your policy. Again, not knowing it verbatim what that might be. You have to be very careful, though, especially in situations where you're dealing with unionized workers, because drug testing is terms and conditions of employment and you haven't negotiated that. There could be an issue with that. So bring that up as well, too.
Yeah, in the private sector, where I work, we do it automatically with any incident, but
Advantage of private versus public.
public is different.
hmm
Yep.
Is that all, Dr. McKinney?
Yeah.
Okay, Director Meese, did you have any other questions?
Maybe it's wise of us to look at our policy regarding this and compare it to our contracts so that we can set the expectation for future incidents or board members, so that, so that we have that precedent to follow and we're not just on a whim approving things, or, and then the employee also knows the expectations too. It's like, if you're going to use your personal vehicle, were they the cause of the accident? Like, maybe we should put something on paper.
You could, but I don't know whether this is a normal event, Mr. Fluke, or that people are using their own vehicles, but
Well, I think expectations are important,
Sure.
and
I think the expectation was to get the job done, and, no one sits there and says, I'm going to get in an accident today. But
Sure.
there are protections available to that employee as well as protections to the district, like I said already under statute, that the liability is limited.
So I think at the base of your question, Director Meese, is should we have some type of release form or some type of document that the employee signs when they use their personal vehicle? Or is that something you'd like to research and get back to the board on?
Sure.
So, Mr. Pratt, all right, thank you. All right, any other questions? All right, next agenda item. Agenda item 5.12, the Apple quote MacBook purchase. Dr. Cartwright?
Mr. Boyd's ready to talk about that.
All right.
So this is a proposal to replace our teacher MacBooks and the administrator MacBooks. The teacher MacBooks are 2018 model year, and the administrator MacBooks are 2017 model year. So they are significantly older than what we'd like. We kept them around for another year beyond what they should have been replaced in order to save money. We're running into issues now where batteries are becoming a problem, screens are starting to die, and we do not have the replacement stash to replace them, and replacement parts are hard to find, and depending upon what they are, trying to get them replaced is not worth it, just due to the cost of the device and the cost of the replacement parts. The proposal is for a 4-year lease through Apple. It is a 0% financing for those 4 years. They do have Apple Care on those devices for that entire time as well. So that covers accidental damage, any type of breakage, any type of part that would not work. We just call Apple. They send us a box. We put the device in the box, send it back. They overnight us usually the replacement device or another device if they cannot replace it. So this quote really is kind of there's no really additional cost to that. So like if we get the devices, we don't have to worry about breakage, damages, anything to that effect. It's the total cost of those devices. In this proposal as well, Apple is giving us a guaranteed buyback of these devices at the end of the lease term if we so choose. We do not have to buy or sell them back to Apple. We can choose to sell them to another vendor, or we can decide to keep them with a $1 buyback or $1 buyout of that lease at the end, and those devices become ours. It's standard practice to try to do a 4-year replacement schedule on these devices, just because at the end of this 4 years, we can then turn around and sell those devices for a substantial amount of money compared to keeping them until, we can't make any money out of them, which is what we've done with some of the devices we spoke about, I think at last month's board meeting, with having to just recycle them and really almost pay to get rid of them at that point. So like you said, usually staying on that replacement schedule, which I think is, what Tom's done a lot around since he's started, is try to work on trying to do a replacement schedule. That way we don't have to have such a all over the place budget. We can kind of stay budget neutral with all of our all purchases, and we can plan for those over the current years. Each year of this, you're looking at about $300, a little over $300 a device per year for each one of the teachers in the contract here, which is about average for a decent computer. And they use those heavily to do their attendance, take grades. They're traveling quite a bit around the buildings, you know, with staffing being able to sub in and out of classrooms. So having a battery that stays charged is very beneficial to the usage of those devices.
Okay.
Any questions?
Yeah. Any questions,
Do
Mr. Boyd?
you know if this was budgeted prior to this year?
So this was budgeted in this current year's budget, but so we normally buy the devices prior to July 1. That way we have them in and we can start issuing them prior to staff and faculty leaving for the summer. That way they can get all their devices transferred. So we're not trying to, you know, do that as soon as they come back. They can kind of get back into their classroom and start working. And how the device or the contracts usually work is we purchase them now, but then our first payment isn't until the, you know, July 1st timeframe. That way it's in the following year's budget. But we do have budget funds this current year for those devices. That makes sense.
Any other questions?
Would we be replacing these all again in 4 years, or would we do the $1 buyback and maybe try to get a couple more years out of them?
It depends. I guess it depends how much money we can get for those devices on buyback at that point in time. Because if we know we can get $300 or $400, not saying that we will, but it may make sense to just trade them in. That's what we usually do with the iPads. We'll keep them for the 3-year lease term, trade them back in because we can get, you know, almost half of the amount of money that we spent on them back. That way we're staying under warranty. We're not paying for repairs, and it just kind of keeps everything smooth. You know, it's a fixed income or a fixed budget item at that point. You know, you're always going to be paying that money, but you don't have to worry about, okay, 1 year we're going to have no money spent, and then the next year we're going to have a substantial amount of money spent because of the older devices, replacing battery screens, or you have to buy devices to replace other devices, and then you're getting into a weird replacement schedule because you had to buy 15 devices to replace the 15 that stopped working because you couldn't repair them, and we didn't have enough devices to cover, you know, to basically give out to new staff that comes into the district. So to answer your question, yes, I mean, that's what we try to do with the replacement schedules is have those, you know, 4-year replacement schedule. If we can stand another year, that's great. But like you said, at that point, you just kind of have to weigh your cost and your benefits of having the devices versus, you know, trading them in and getting that, you know, retail value on them to roll that into the quote. I think the quote was for, let me go back here quick.
219,000.
Yeah, 219, 304,000. So it's $54,000 a year. It's 0% financing for that term, which is almost unheard of anymore with buying computer technology. And then they also have the guaranteed buybacks for those specific devices. Like I said, most of these are going to staff in the buildings, the administration. There are some Mac Minis that are going to some of the labs at the middle school for the arts. Some of the issues that we had with those devices are the hard drives were not big enough when they were originally bought, you know, a few years ago, prior to me coming in here. So the drives are slower, and we can't run the applications that we need to when you start running Adobe Creative Cloud, and, you know, the students are saving documents to the drives. They're filling up in the same way with the teacher devices as well. And then we can't do updates, and then it becomes a security issue. So it's, you know, kind of just time to renew those devices.
So we have internal staff that does all the hardware and software updates, and nothing that Apple does. They don't.
No, so basically the only thing we're doing is buying the devices from Apple, and then we take care of updating them, managing them, pushing out updates, you know, clearing off,
So
you know,
it's
hard drives.
if you're going to replace a technology, that the technology is all the same, so that your team can easily, you know, make changes to that laptop rather than, you know, if this teacher needs a laptop, go buy it. But then you got a different version, you have different issues with that particular laptop, and it's a bigger headache that way.
Yeah, that's why we do the middle school, high school teachers in a group, and then the elementary school teachers would be in another group. That way, at least it's middle school, high school's all the same, and then the elementary's all the same. Plus that way it helps, if we were to buy everybody in the district a device at one time, it would, obviously throw the budget off. So we just try to budget that out over those specific years.
Does every teacher have a MacBook and an iPad?
Yes. Yeah.
And so on this contract, we're looking at roughly 114 units? I just tried to add it together.
It is actually, there's 143, I had the numbers here quick. Yeah, so there's 143 MacBook Airs. There is another 15 administrator MacBooks, and then there's 2 MacBook Pros, and then there's 23 Mac Minis for the computer lab replacements.
23 MacBook Minis? Is that
Mac Minis, yeah.
Oh, yeah, Mac Minis. Because it shows 20 here on, you talking about agenda item, or I'm sorry, receipt number 9, line 9? Plus the, okay, so the next line is also.
They have, there's 2 different, they have a different network card in them. They're 10 gig NIC versus 1 gig NIC. That's why there's 3 different.
Okay.
3 on that second line item.
So this $219,000 gets paid July 1st, and then for the next 4 years, we don't have anything else to pay?
No, we pay the $54,000 every year for 4 years, yeah. So that way we're not paying a huge dollar amount up front. And again, it's 0% financing for that term.
Right.
Dr. Hogan?
Yep. So we have across the board HPs where I work. Have you considered, is there a reason why we're using a more expensive technology, which is the Apple Chromebooks, over like a cheaper Hewlett Packard?
So the reason, like I said, it's been decided before I started that they were using MacBooks and iPads. I will say the Macs are far superior in hardware quality, so that limits us on breakages and damages. Plus it ties in very well with the student iPads, so that way they can monitor the student iPads from their MacBook. If we were to switch technologies, it would be a lot more difficult, and we'd have to pay for additional softwares to monitor student iPad usage.
Yeah, I agree. I think that in the educational arena, it's more Apple technologies anywhere you go across the U.S. Plus, it works better with, I think, the graphic software and
Yeah, in certain
components, which
certain
is
cases.
highly used in education. So I was just wanting to see if you did that.
I mean, there definitely probably be a little bit of cost savings there, but I don't know that it's enough to uproot the entire, culture of Dover. We've used these devices for the last, almost 10 years. Looking back on it, we weren't one-to-one for the entire time frame, but that's most what the teachers, know, and we'd have to have a lot of professional development. Not saying that that's impossible, but it does take time that we don't have. I think that'd be better suited for student engagement activities, not just trying to, replace computers to save a few dollars.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Boyd. So I guess this is not for Mr. Boyd, but for the board, just as a reminder, if we approve this contract, we're not just spending money for for the next year, 2024, 2025, we're spending money for the next 4 years, none of which budget's been determined. So if we execute this agreement, we've already committed to spend money on a budget that we haven't figured out how to mitigate already. So it's a consideration. All right, next agenda item is 5.13, Automated Logic Contracting Services Assurance Plan. Dr. Cartwright?
Mr. Fluke is going to talk about the next 2 items, I believe.
Yes, this is actually a renewal of a contract that we have yearly with Automated Logic. What they do is they take care of all our building automation controls for the HVAC equipment throughout our entire district. We have almost 1,000 devices that they take care of throughout the district. They come and they do software upgrades, they do patches on them. If we need controllers replaced, they do that. They do backups, so if our system were to crash, we have a starting point to go back again. I did bring a couple slides along. to kind of give you an idea of what I'm talking about and kind of what it looks like from our perspective, from the maintenance department side. So that slide there is actually a pretty simple slide. It's a building outline of, I think that I can't see far enough to get it. That's North Salem. It's North Salem Elementary, and that is actually the exhaust fans that are on the roof at North Salem. Just real simple graphic that we use to help troubleshoot and do our preventive maintenance on all the HVAC systems. Could I get to this one, please, Amy? That is a fan coil unit. It shows you what the fan's doing. It shows you what the outside air is doing. The coil's doing. The actuators there on the red and blue coils for the chilled water. It regulates temperature. The little thing up in the right-hand corner is a trend, which if you're having a problem with the unit is a great troubleshooting tool that you can see when and what it's doing as it's running.
So about that, so that reduces the amount of time and potentially expenses it has.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If we were to go to every device in this district, it would probably take a person a week, easy, and we wouldn't still hit all of the devices that we have or the equipment that we have in the district. That is a HRU unit. Actually, it's not. I'm having a hard time seeing it. That's a heat pump. That is a water source heat pump here at Dover. That shows you the energy recovery wheel in the middle. That's the green thing. It gives you stat feedback. Once again, on the top right, there's the trend. It gives you the outside temperature. It gives you everything you need to troubleshoot it. And this is essential in today's world when we have so many pieces of equipment in our buildings. The high school alone, I think, sits around 350 devices. So just in that building alone, you could probably employ a person full-time just to go through and check that equipment. Those are the chillers at, I believe, the high school. It gives you all the pump feedbacks. It tells you what the pumps are doing. It tells you if they're an alarm. It gives you the differential pressure set points that are out through the building, which help control those pumps through the VFDs. That's what's down there in the bottom right corner, those 4 boxes in the bottom. So there's tons and tons of valuable information here from the HVAC aspect on how to keep these things running efficiently and keep them running. And I know we've talked before about preventive maintenance. This is a big, big part of the preventive maintenance tool, just not us doing the summer stuff that we do and physically putting our hands on all this equipment, but this helps in the breakdowns and the time that they're down during the year too. Because we can go through and we can hit every building and see every piece of equipment within a matter of an hour to go through each one of these. That is a rooftop unit. That's the auditorium at the high school. Once again, there's tons of information in the slides here. And you can see to the left, that's the tree on the left. And I pulled just one section out of it. And you can see all of the devices that are listed down there on the left. It's just the high school, it's a monster. And the people that came on the tour with me, you kind of got firsthand to see, you know, the equipment that's there. That's actually the one that's in the mezzanine. So if you were on the tour, that was that large unit that sits in the mezzanine, and that's all the information that comes out of that through the building automation system. And that is the high school. So the graphic on the bottom left gives you where the temperatures are at, if they're cool, if they're too hot, they'll be red. It just gives you a real quick visual on how to go through and troubleshoot it. A lot of times we can find trouble and problems before it's even noticed by a teacher or a staff member.
Does it detect leaks?
It does not. No, it does not. And that is a chiller loop over at the middle school. You can see there is just tons of information that's in that. We have the pumps, we have the holding tank, the chillers down there on the right bottom, the pumps, the condenser pumps, everything is listed there. And we can, you know, keep an eye on that equipment there. Also, when you're troubleshooting something and you can't quite figure out what's going on, if you know that something is saying that a valve or an actuator is a certain position, it's not, it cuts down on being able to fix it. So if the actuator is supposed to be open, it's closed, you go and check it, it helps you find that problem a lot quicker too.
Any questions from the board?
Is this monitoring only, or can you remotely go in and change settings or restart equipment?
Oh, we can remote in and change settings. We can do troubleshooting from it, so we can demand stuff on and off. So if we have an actuator, for example, we think isn't working, we can send a command to it to open, check, see if it has 24 volts, see if it's working, and go from there. It's a great, great troubleshooting tool. Every district has some kind of building automation. It's it's necessary when you're dealing with the amount of equipment and components that we deal with.
So these contracted services, this will work for all 6 of our schools, right?
Yes, we are all under the same umbrella with Automated Logic, and that's the way it usually is between districts. My previous district had one, and the only problem with that is it is proprietary. If you need parts just like we did at Wagglestown with the boiler controllers, that's part of the thing that goes along with it. But it's necessary, and it saves a lot of money in the long run just with efficiency too, with being able to cut back on energy consumption too.
Have we compared this to other companies that provide the same service?
Yes, yes, that's my previous district, and if you want to kind of rate them, this is one of the lower costing ones. The company I used at my previous district was lower too. It seems the bigger the company, I won't use names, the higher the price because the more of a corporate overhead it handles. So that kind of seems to go hand in hand. Automated Logic is a smaller company. They're owned by another company, but their rates are pretty good compared to other ones.
Any other questions?
Yes, I have questions on the service agreement itself, the billing and the price. Billing says one payment paid annually of $35,400. Next line says agreement price, 6-month pricing, 1/1 to 6/30, $35,400.
Yes, that's correct. So what it is, it's a 6-month agreement. So the yearly would be more than that. But what we try to do is get everything to match up with the fiscal year. So before me, they had it end in January. I'm changing it so we get a fiscal year, true year annual contract. It just makes more sense instead of splitting it up that you take that annual rate and you apply it to the fiscal year. So this is for half. So if you were looking at a year, it would be double. And what we did with this, we actually trimmed this down almost $6,000 on the amount of visits they come. I trimmed that out just to try to trim some cost off of it.
So are we looking at a $70,000 a year contract for these?
It hopefully will be a little less. Like I said, I've trimmed this one, and I'm hoping to trim when the next yearly one comes. We're going to trim it down too.
Yeah, I would say I agree with you, Director Kendig. Those 2 lines together is a little bit misleading because it does say $35,000 for year 1, but that $35,000 for year 1 is a 6-month.
It's 6 months. Yes, that is correct. Yep.
But it says paid annually.
Right. Well, it's a one time, so it'll be for the 6 months. The way that it's written there is it's a 6-month
I
agreement.
understand
Yeah.
that, but that,
I can have them change the wording if you would like. That's not a problem.
well, I personally think you ought to.
Okay.
I mean,
We can do that. That's no problem.
we could sit and argue about that for a long time.
No need. I can have them change it. That's no big deal.
All right.
The dollar amount's not going to change. We can change the verbiage. That's not a problem at all.
Be clear for
Yep.
everybody.
That's fine. Yep.
So to clarify, this is for January through June 30th.
Yep. That is correct.
Okay, and then we'll have another contract for the
Yep.
next
Yep.
school year.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. Exactly.
And that will be a $70,000 contract, roughly.
Roughly, yeah. And I can say districts that get the same services we do are paying over $100,000 for the same services we're getting with other companies. More towards $110,000 or $115,000 for a yearly contract. Building automation is a very, very complex entity, we'll call it.
So if we agreed to this contract, we're paying for services that we're already in, right?
Yes. Yes.
So that began January 1st of this year.
We will get the services after. The number of visits are 9, so we'll still get those 9 visits. They just won't be spread out as far as they were before. So we'll get everything that's included within the contract. It'll just be a little bit condensed.
Okay. So this contract doesn't obligate us for next year?
Nope, it does not now.
Only this year.
Yep, I am not a believer in signing anything more than a year contract with anything because I feel that services decline when you sign multiple year deals and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, probably right about that. Yeah, thank you. Any other questions? from
I
the
do
board?
have some questions. I was looking at
Mr. Whitman.
the clarifications and exclusions page of this service agreement, and it's kind of alarming just to see that they don't want to do mechanical repairs. I mean, they're going to charge a premium time for emergency or after normal business hours. And then the whole equipment exclusions lists, like a lot of the things we saw in
Yeah, that's normal. Building automation is the things that monitor it and make it work. You can get in, and I understand why they write it this way. They can get into a lot more work and a
Right.
bigger scope work. They're controls.
They
Make,
want you and your guys to do the equipment.
and we would do that. That would be under us because
Yeah.
in-house we would be able to do that a lot cheaper. So we would not ask them to do stuff like that. They would be strictly for building automation.
So when they're referring to mechanical repairs, they're referring to the equipment mechanical repairs?
They're referring to like fan motors, they're referring to compressors, stuff that come hand in hand, like the fan coil that I showed you up there, the blowers that are in that, that's mechanical. Some people ask them to replace that, but that doesn't have anything to do with the building automation side. That's the mechanical piece of the equipment.
What term do they give their equipment?
Their equipment is controls.
Controls, so they'll do all controls repairs.
Yep,
and
absolutely.
Assessing and problem solving.
Yep, absolutely.
So nothing in this contract stands out to you as like any red flags?
No, this is pretty much identical to the ones I've seen with previous companies that do building automation. It's pretty standard, cut and dry. I think this is more protection for them because they'll get into situations where a company or a district might have other things going on, and they would get pulled into doing that, and then it being expected it would be on a controls bill, but it shouldn't be. It should be more of a mechanical repair.
Any other questions?
You have a question, more, I guess. So when we talk about these expenses in a planning meeting, it's confusing to me whether they've already been included in a budget, like for like the presentation we saw. So, or is the purpose of the presentation at the planning session because they're outside of that budget, so we're approving that?
This was budgeted in the current budget.
Okay, so that's
Yep.
good to know for this,
Yep.
but for some of is that the case for all items in a planning meeting?
Almost everything we ask for is already budgeted, and we would tell you if it were not.
Okay, thank you.
You may have said this, but you've already used, I'm sorry, you
No,
may
sorry.
have said this, you've already used this company,
Yeah, this is just a renewal. Yeah, we've used them. They were here before I came here. They do a good job since the year I've been here. They've been very attentive to us. If we have any problems, they come out. They're very flexible with us. There's no worry about, Ms. Whitmer said about off time hours. I haven't ran into any of that. Even in my past 18 years working HVAC in district setting, haven't had any issues with that.
what do you mean off-time hours?
Like she said about there was an extra cost, like if it was weekends, holidays, yeah.
It said that in the contract.
Yes, it did. And there's always ways. So for example, if an actuator fails, you can take the actuator off and manually open the valve and you're good to go until they can come during normal working hours and fix it.
And you're the one that's kind of in charge of
Mhm.
making sure this is
Yep.
all, okay.
Okay, any other questions on this agenda item? If not, we'll go to the next one. Okay, the next agenda item is the Moore Engineering Company proposal for upgrades to boilers and pumps at Live Elementary School and North Salem Elementary. Mr. Fluke, I think she said you were the one briefing on this one
Yes.
also.
This is for our ESSERS funds that we have available that are going to be expiring. This is the engineering work and support behind that. So we have very old boilers at both those buildings. When we did the tour, the folks that came along on the tour saw those. This is to replace those boilers and the pumps. When you replace something like that, you should always have engineering support behind it, just to make sure that you ensure you put the right equipment in. We're probably talking somewhere around $1 million in ESSERS funds. You don't want to mess it up. You want to make sure that the funding goes through, that the RFP is written correctly. You just want to make sure that you have somebody in your corner to make sure it's right. And if something does come up, to kind of watch your back and protect you.
Makes sense.
Hmm?
Any questions?
Yeah, I have a concern, and it goes back to our high school tour.
Mhm.
4 years old, and we got boilers that are leaking.
Hmm? We have pipes that are leaking.
Pipes to the boilers that are leaking.
Mhm.
Now, that could be poor workmanship. That could be poor material.
Mhm.
I'm nervous talking about putting boilers in other schools if in fact it's poor material.
I think at the high school, I think it was poor workmanship. When you're heating up a 6-inch copper piece of pipe, that is a lost art, and that is very difficult. I think that it was just an oversight, and I think that was a workmanship issue. I don't think that was a materials issue. I think that was the person that was putting that piece of pipe together, that pipe fitter, just didn't do a good job.
So what are we going to do if we get new boilers for these elementary schools to make sure that doesn't happen?
Well, I know, I think I said when we did our walkthrough, you have to have somebody that oversees that. That would be my responsibility to oversee that, just to make sure that they're there and they're doing it. Now, don't get me wrong, things could get missed, but you need to have somebody there to oversee it. And actually, the engineering company helps with that a little bit with that too, but that's mostly the district's responsibility. We make sure that what we are supposed to get is what we get.
Any other questions?
I just
Director
want,
Whitmer.
yes, thank you. I want to be clear that when it says demolition of the boilers and HVAC pumps, Moore is doing that work?
No, they are designing that work because there's the boilers, the way they are now, they sit on pads. So those pads will be flattened out and new pads will be poured so the condensing boilers can put in. Their footprint is a lot smaller than a traditional cast iron boiler. So the configuration of them will change. Like if they face north and south now, the condensing boilers might face east and west. And you have to make sure that the piping that comes off the condensation can make it to a drain, a floor drain.
Right. So none of the cost estimate here refers to actual demo, construction, all the like
This is all
physical work.
right.
This
You are
is
correct.
Paperwork and design.
This is design, engineering, and assurance that it's going to be done correctly engineering wise, and we get the equipment that we need.
Did we do multiple company bids for this, or
On this, we did not.
so Moore is the only company we've received any type of?
Well, it is because we were in a time crunch. We are in a very serious time crunch that we're going to lose over $1 million if we don't proceed with this. And I do not want to lose over $1 million in free money.
So is this another company we went to as an alternative to the Crabtree, and what was the name of the company?
This is a company I have worked with in the past, and they do fabulous work. They always look out for the end user, and they look out for them and what they want. I've had great experience with this company. They're a really good engineering firm. In fact, some districts use exclusively, and I can tell you there's districts in Lancaster County that use this firm exclusively and don't go to anybody else.
So this is the same work, though, that we got a bid from the other engineering firm?
Some of it, yes, it is, but it's scaled back because the other work it had more to it, it had chillers and boilers. This is just boilers.
Okay.
And pumps.
And that was the presentation, I forget which month that was, maybe November, December? That's prior to us coming on, but I do remember the presentation. So that whole presentation and the bid has been scrapped. We've gone to this one.
Right. In that previous one, it was voted down by the board, the way it was presented to do it, because the chillers and the boilers were in that, and there was a little extra money that was come from the district to go along with that ESSER's money.
So what's our deadline on this one to get the ESSER's money? Anybody know?
Yep.
September 24, yeah.
Yep. There's Miranda.
But there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle, so that's why this is of the essence, especially because it was voted down in November.
Yeah, we kind of were put behind because it was voted down in November. So,
But understand one thing, it was 1 to 2.5 million that we were going to get in ESSER's money, correct? And they were offering something like $24 million worth of contract work, as I recall.
that was for the complete renovations. That was for the second part. The first part was not that.
Yeah.
The first part was with the ESSER's money, and there was a little extra.
Yeah, well, we voted on the 24 million and we shot it down.
I believe the voted first was on the first part, and then once that first part failed, the second part automatically failed.
There was only one vote.
No, well,
Was
yeah,
when you
it
were
didn't-
correct,
we
Todd,
didn't-
it failed.
Yeah.
When the first one failed.
Yeah, there was 2 votes.
Yeah.
There was 2 votes. We can probably look at the records and find that out, but it was 2 votes. And then once the first vote failed, the second one did not go through then, because it was 2 parts. The first part was to use the ESSER's money as a complete building renovation for North Salem and Lib. And then once that first part failed with the ESSER's money, the second part of the bid, the second part of the project, it didn't matter, because if you didn't do the first part, you couldn't do the second.
Yeah, because the playground equipment is what caught our attention.
That was on the second one for the whole building renovation. That was part 2 of the bid, or of the vote, because there's 2 parts to it.
Bottom line was, it was being thrown.
I wasn't on the board at the time, but wasn't there a question that was posed by one of the directors? How much are you charging us? So this company's telling us up front how much they're charging.
Yeah, this isn't architectural. This is all engineering. The other firm was architectural because the second part of that vote, well, there was architectural involved because we were doing complete building renovations. The first part of it was the boilers and the chillers. So yes, this is straight engineering. There's no architecture. This is just engineering to make sure that the stuff we get works.
Right, okay. What's the cost of the work going to probably be?
Probably around $1 million. And that comes from ESSER's funds. There's no district money that's going to be used for that. That's kind of the urgency it's here. If we don't,
all ESSERS will cover the
yes,
entire.
ESSERS will cover the entire cost, not this. If I'm speaking correctly, Miranda? We have to pay for this part because ESSERS won't cover it. It's not allowed. But if where we're at now, yeah, it's free money, and we need to take this part to make sure that the free money we use, we get the correct equipment, and that it's engineered correctly.
I appreciate your patience in helping us see through this.
No problem.
Trying to piece together what we were sitting out in the audience when all this was happening last time.
Yep.
So we're trying to figure that out. Is there any other questions? Dr. Kindig, I know you're thinking about this. You got any more questions? Okay. Dr. Meese.
Yes. Do you do like a pre-bid walkthrough? Like, how did Moore know what to look for?
We contacted them.
And did they come on site?
Yep,
and walk?
they've been here at least 3 times.
So why can't we invite Moore and maybe 2 or 3 other? Did you put?
Because it has to be bid.
But did you put the invite out for
You can't.
several?
You can't until they write the RFP for it. Since this has to be bid through ESSERS, and it has to go through more hoops, we'll say, because it's government money. So you have to get this piece of it, and then they put the RFP out.
I'm talking about to compete with Moore. So to Carmen's point, to get more than one price. So if we invited Moore to come on our property and look around, how come we didn't have maybe 2 other?
Because
or at least one other one come at the same exact
yeah.
time and walk 3 to 4 companies around,
Right.
and then put a.
I understand.
Put a date on
I
it.
understand what you're saying, because we are in urgency right now, and we're going to lose over $1 million if we don't do this.
I understand, but you spent the time to have Moore come, so why not have maybe 2 other companies along with Moore?
Right.
I guess is what.
Because they could fit us into their schedule. That's kind of what it comes down to.
Did you reach out to any other
I
companies
did not,
to
no.
see if they could fit us in their?
I did not,
schedule as
because I've
well?
worked with them before, and I knew they would figure a way out to work us in.
Well, it would be nice moving forward if we had
Right.
some comparison numbers.
Right.
I'm not saying that this is,
I agree.
we could probably go with these guys 100%, even if they were a little bit more than another.
I can tell you, if we do that, we're going to get delayed again, and we're going to lose over $1 million
I'm not
over
saying right now, I'm
30,000.
saying moving forward.
Right. Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's been a consistent theme over the last couple of years that we just get one bid, one
Right.
bid.
Well, not with me, but this is a special event.
We had one bid from Crabtree, we had one bid from Moore, we had one bid from the bus company. It would just
I don't
be
do the bus
nice-
company.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I know, I
yeah.
understand that,
Right.
but I'm just saying as a general theme, it would be nice if we were presented with a few
Right.
different options.
Well, we were kind of put behind the 8 ball with time, and I knew they could work us in, and I don't want to let over $1 million go to waste over $5,000 or whatever a difference might be. You're going to get
Well, of
really
course,
close to
of
saying.
course not. Of course.
Right.
Of course not. Yeah. I mean,
That's my main concern
and
is
Dr. Hack
yeah.
has said that as
Right.
well.
Yeah, my
100%
main
agree.
concern is that we don't lose over $1 million in free money, because if we lose over $1 million in free money, wow, there's nobody here's doing their due diligence.
Contention.
Right.
My contention is that we don't have a comparison. And
Right.
so same thing happened with Crabtree when they were here. It's just we're presented with one option. It would be nice if we were presented with at least one other option or 2
Right.
other options. So if you came to me and said, yes, I reached out to 5 other companies and they couldn't fit us in our schedule, Moore was it, cool. But that didn't happen
Right.
either. You reached
Right.
out to one company and maybe other companies would come back and be less expensive, but based on, your recommendations, we would go with the more expensive company, but at least
We don't know they're more expensive.
Huh?
We don't know that they are more expensive.
I know we don't.
Right.
That's
Right,
the
I agree.
unfortunate
But
part.
the point that I'm
exactly my
making,
point.
the point that I'm making here is we have a certain amount of time to do this, and if we don't do it now, we're going to lose that money. And we were set back because of the vote. The vote said no, we got set back. I need to do my due diligence and make sure we use that over $1 million of money. And I'm not going to squabble $5,000 when we're talking over $1 million. I know this company, I've used them in the past. They do fabulous work. I mean, if we go through and we do that, which we do in other things, which I agree, we do. Everything we do, we buy things here that cost $5,000 and we get 3 quotes. But we're not talking about over $1 million of free money. So, I mean, I don't know what else I can add to that. I don't want to lose over $1 million of money that's free.
Yeah, we get that,
To follow along with what Heidi's saying, quite honestly, I know one of the companies that goes over here to Hanover, and they do Hanover, the food corporations, 3 of them. They also do Pixel, which is in fact now the old Spring Grove paper mill. They take care of the boilers and all that kind of stuff. The reason it catches my attention is based on you keep saying about the idea this equipment is like 30 years old in some of these schools. And that's the kind of equipment that's in these factories. And this guy has people sitting in there at night specifically from his company that monitor everything. And to have other eyes come into these schools is something we may want to take a look at in the future.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Well, I want to say, in the process of asking questions, I would encourage everyone, don't take anything personal. We're trying to figure out how to, learn the business, run the business of the school district. We're put in a position of approval. We understand the administration is, you have all the experts. And so we respect that. And so when we're asking questions, we're not questioning your competence or judgment or anything like that. We're just asking. So I appreciate what you do. I also want to say, the board has tried to engage in what's going on in the district. We have requested tours of all the buildings, and Dr. Cartwright and her staff have been extremely accommodating. To that point, I've had some very, very good tours. Everyone that you've guided has been excellent. So I want to recognize you publicly for doing that. It does provide us some context. It's dangerous too, I know from your perspective. Now we learn that we have leaks in pipes that nobody would have known before. Maybe the board would have never known. But you're forthright with that information. You're letting us know. It gives us context for where the real needs are, and we also see the quality of the work that's being done. And as I commented on some of these tours, the cleanliness of the restrooms and the facilities is exceptional. And so there's a lot of good work being, done in the administration, and we thank you for that.
Any other questions?
No. Good. No. All right. Let's go to the next agenda item. So 5.15, 2024-2025 LIU General Operating Budget. Dr. Cartwright?
This is what we pay to the IU for services every single year. Students with emotional support needs, learning support needs, interpreting services, occupational and physical therapy, and hearing and vision impaired. I missed that one. All there in public content.
So my first question for this, is this prorated on how many students that we have enrolled in their services?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, this is based on average daily membership, ADMs, if I'm not mistaken. Correct, Mrs. Weaver?
Okay. So that explains the variances from year to year as the number plus the inflation of whatever their charges are.
Absolutely,
Okay.
it varies.
And so we are looking at a projected almost $1.2 million for the 2024-25 budget. Up $20,000. Okay, is there any questions from the board? Hearing none, let's move to the next agenda item. 5.16, the 2024-2025 York Adams Academy General Operating Budget. Dr. Cartwright.
York Adams Academy is an alternative placement for students who need an option, and this is the cost that we pay to allow several of our students each year to graduate from YAA.
Okay. Floor is open for questions.
Let me just add on top of that, that we have given the teachers a 4% increase in their salaries, and we are not increasing the financial obligation to each school district this coming year.
Okay. Thank you, Director Emig. So for those of you that don't know, Director Emig is on the board for the York Adams Academy, so he's our subject matter expert on that topic. Any questions from the board? All right, let's go to the next agenda item, the 5.17, the 2024-2025 York County School of Technology General Operating Budget. I'll start with Dr. Cartwright, and then we'll go to Director Meese. She is has been our representative to that board over the last year. Dr. Cartwright.
A little different from YAA for different reasons, but York Tech is an alternative to Dover High School for students who want a program that we do not offer in the CTE field.
Okay, Director Meese, can you give us any insights on the budget and the reason for the increase this year? And I'm assuming this part of this is due to the average daily membership as well. ADM, I think I'm using the right term and acronym.
You are. There is a 2.2% projected enrollment increase.
Okay.
As far as the budget meetings go, nothing jumped out at me as a concern or an alarm. So we did take a vote, and I voted for the budget. So. Yeah.
Okay, so we supported it. Any questions?
I have a question.
Director Whitman.
Well, I've never asked this, but like Mrs. Weaver, is there anybody who looks this over from our, I guess, financial standpoint to see if there's any red flags? Like,
Yes, I do. I look over all of them and there are no red flags.
no red flags. That's good.
Any other questions? All right, the next agenda item is 5.18 curriculum. On this particular agenda item, there are posted quite a number of curriculum sheets that have been, some of them have been completed, some of them have not. Dr. Cartwright.
Dr. Hauk can speak to this.
I like to bring any curriculum to the board as soon as I can to get approval so that you don't get some giant 1,000-page document at the very, very end. There are two different types of curriculum documents. The first is the KUD charts. That is just the first step of curriculum writing, but it does, in rather extensive detail, outline exactly what is being taught. So although that's not considered complete, I like to bring that to the board ahead of time. There's really no sense in us moving forward if the board doesn't want to approve or has any objection to anything that's in that KUD chart. So some of the subjects, that's all you're seeing right now is the KUD chart. Once that is approved, then we move on to write the unit maps. The items that say complete in the title, those are fully completed. Those KUD charts were already approved, so the teachers moved on to writing the unit plans. So the ones that are complete are done, and once you approve them, we are finished with that particular subject. And the KUD chart, we will continue to write after you approve it.
Any questions for Dr. Hauk?
I just want to say I like what I saw with the KUD and then how you have the lesson plans. I think if you have a substitute, if you have a new teacher, I think it was great that they have that at their hands. I just had a question about 133 English 3. I think it was the understanding. There was some that I just didn't understand. In the understand column. So are they still going to go back and look at that still even though we approve it, they can go back and make changes?
Absolutely.
Okay.
But any changes of significance, I would bring back to the board. If they change a tiny little thing that doesn't change the spirit of the document, then I might not. But if it's of any significance, I would bring it back to you.
Can we talk about it a little bit after the meeting?
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
I have a question on Director Miller brought it up about the English. Who wrote the definition for under the column understand? Does that come out of some curriculum book, or does teachers write that, or who wrote the little write-ups under understand?
The teachers did based on the standard. So they look at the standard, which the standards can sometimes be written to be very broad and sometimes a little vague. So the teachers determine, what does that standard say that kids need to know, understand, and be able to do? So the teachers wrote that.
Okay, for me, the one that stuck out to me was literature helps humanity face complex concepts such as identity and justice, and decide for themselves how they will approach those concepts in their lives. What's that mean?
I would have to ask an English teacher that.
Okay. I have a question on the music, which I didn't realize till you just said it. They're complete, but what are the state requirements for music in the elementary schools?
We are required to teach music in the elementary school. It's in the Chapter 4 regulations.
Okay, is there a set amount of hours you have to teach it, or?
Not in Chapter 4, no. It's just required to be taught at the elementary level.
So we would decide the hours, the board, the administration.
Well, currently,
Decide the hours.
you could. Keep in mind, though, that music is part of what provides teachers with your contractual planning time. So we could substitute that for another subject, but we still have to give teachers their planning time.
Okay. Thank you.
I can, if you would mind, helping me to remember that particular understand that you had questions about, because I won't remember by the time I get back to my seat. I'd be happy to ask an English teacher and get back to you.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, if you're going to be around when we're done,
I will be around.
we'll write it down.
Okay,
Yeah,
thanks.
Yes.
Yes.
He just brought up something. So I was looking through, I guess it's chapter 24 in the statutes under education. And we had a discussion, and I was looking in there, and there was a whole list of things that should be in music education. Everything from singing voice to meter, and there was a whole list of things, probably 10 or 12 different items. All of those are embedded in the requirements. And you referenced another chapter or something that you said they were in another section of the law.
Chapter 4
Chapter 4, right.
of the school code.
Is that 1949 school
Yes, it
code?
is.
Okay. Chapter 4. Okay. I'll try to become familiarized with that.
Okay.
So the other thing is, and we're trying to appreciate the fact that when Dr. Cartwright and her team got here, there was no curriculum at all. So you were writing.
There was
Oh.
some curriculum, yes. There was some that was written, but it was only the KUD chart. That was what we had as curriculum in a cover sheet. I added the unit maps and we had pacing guides as well. So I added the unit maps because I wanted it to be a little bit more detailed, but we did have subjects and courses that I was not able to find curriculum for at all.
Okay. So that's, and we're putting all of that in, I assume, in a repository so that doesn't happen again, right?
Correct. We're posting it on the website. So it stays there, and then I am keeping pretty good track of it myself.
Okay.
Yes.
And I don't know how websites work exactly, but if you put something on a website, that becomes a virtual archive, even though you have an archive somewhere else in the building, is that?
We're going to do both. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have all of the files, and they're also on the board docs, so we'll have them in several locations.
So the KUD is just the first step. You got to take it across the finish line. You have to put all these other elements in there, the chart and all that.
Correct,
So,
correct. And that's my opinion. There are some other districts that may stop at the KUD chart. I like it to be a lot more detailed than that.
so what percentage of that curriculum do you think we've completed? I noticed, it keeps growing on the website, so I see all of that, but how close are we to being done with all of this?
We're mostly done with the core subjects, which is what we started with: math, science, social. Well, let me back up with science. I'll explain that in a second. But math, reading, social studies, we started with those. That's why you're seeing the English 1, English 2, English 3. And then once they're done with those, they'll move on to electives. With science, that's going to be on hold because we have a whole new set of standards that are coming in the 25-26 school year. Brand new set of standards. So we're really going to be starting kind of over again with the science standards. So we have been, I've assembled a team of sort of science leaders that are making sure they're going to workshops and they're learning a lot about that so that they can provide some advice to their colleagues. And we'll be spending some time next year preparing for that for the following year. So we've kind of halted the writing of science curriculum.
Do you have like a nutshell of what those major changes are going to be?
It's, it's not a nutshell kind of changes. I think the biggest thing to think about is that everything is going to be phenomenon based. So they give you a real world kind of issue or problem, and you design your lessons around that. So it's a lot less of learning facts and discrete pieces of information and a lot more about problem solving and using science and using experimental design and those types of things. It's a lot more hands-on.
You see this as an improvement?
I believe it is, yes.
Is this something other states have already adopted? We're just getting to it, or we're Pennsylvania out on the leading edge of this?
I don't know the answer to that. Quite frankly, I'm kind of a little focused on Pennsylvania standards and haven't really concerned myself with other states at this point, but I can look that up.
So back to the question about taking science out of it. What did you say the percentage was of curriculum that's complete?
I would say, I haven't done the math. Maybe 75% of the core curriculum has been finished, math, reading, social studies, but we still have a ways to go with this is the same teachers that are writing all of the curriculum, and we have a limited amount of time, and I can't really pay them to work outside of the school day. So
right.
We're using what little time we have to get it done.
Appreciate the progress you're making.
Yeah.
Any questions from the board?
Director Kindig, were you looking at English 3 when you had the concern about the understand column?
I think it was in English 3 and English 4.
Okay. Yeah, I'm looking through a lot of the understand column it's techniques, genres, interpretations, skills. But there are a couple that concern me. There's one here that says, people tell the truth as they see it in a way that advances their position in life. This is not always the truth in your worldview. And then the next one is challenge everything, even if only in your own head. So I think that could be straying a little from literature and techniques and interpretation, and seems like it's straying a little towards teaching morality. I'm not saying that's what the teacher is doing. That's the way I'm interpreting it.
I'm not going to remember them by the time I get back to my seat. So if you want to provide me with the lines, I'm happy to stay afterwards. I will take that back to the English teachers for more clarification.
Yeah, just need some clarification on that.
Sure.
Is that, Director McKinney, is that on page 3?
English 3, number 133, I guess that's the course number. In the understand column, it's the last two on the first page.
Director Kindig, do you have those on paper that you could maybe circle the ones he's talking about for me?
I will give you a copy when we're done.
Thank you.
Yeah, they're just a little unclear on what the objective is there.
Yeah, I see what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anyone else? Questions? All right. Thank you, Dr. Howe.
You're welcome.
Next item on the agenda is 5.19, revision to 2025-26 district calendar, adding 2 makeup days. Dr. Cartwright.
You summarized it last month. The board approved this calendar, and afterwards we realized we did not have those 2 dates, so this is a redo.
Okay, excellent. Any questions, comments? Next agenda item will be bills paid, 5.20. I guess I'll hand this to you, Director McKinney, you're the treasurer.
I did send over a few questions, I believe, to Miranda, but I did not go through the most recent check runs.
Yeah, I didn't receive any questions about the check runs
Okay.
to date.
I do recall the one I had a question about previously was just the E and B payments. There were a lot of E and B payments spread over a couple weeks. So just what that was paying for, maybe what term of service that was paying for. That's that's the biggest one I had a question about.
I'll look into it and get back to you.
Great, thank you.
You're saying EMB?
E and B transportation.
Oh.
It's the bus company.
E and B. Okay. Anything else? Any questions on this from the board?
Yep.
Director Kindig.
On page 2 of your report, Phil Haven, we pay, looks like about $1,500 to Phil Haven.
Okay.
Any idea?
I'd have to look at the invoice to know exactly what it was for.
And then page 4, we pay Central York for homestead, farmstead mailing postage.
Yes, Central York does all of York County, and then they bill us for our portion.
So they make all the mailings for the taxes, exemptions.
They do all the homestead, farmstead mailings for us, and then they just bill the districts for their portion, yes.
And finally, Catholic Charities, $12,000.
Again, I would have to go and look at the invoice to tell you exactly what it's for.
All right, thank you.
Hey, let me ask Director McKinney, were some of these questions that he had, were they on the email that you sent and that maybe it didn't go out possibly?
Not those in particular, though, the Phil Haven and Catholic ones.
Can you make sure those are included on that when you resend?
I can do that.
All right, thank you. Any other questions from the board? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to the next item. Treasurer's Report 5.21. Director McKinney, I'll give you a second to finish what you're writing and then talk to you about that. If we need to hand it off to the CFO, we can do that.
While he's looking for that, can I,
I'm looking at it. Yeah.
Miranda, do we have like a purchase requisition process for like things like Spangler, like Ace Hardware? Or does each building department have their own budget, and as long as they stay within their budget, they don't have to ask for like permission to purchase things?
We have internal controls in place in our software and in the business office with regards to purchases, if that's what you're asking.
So like, let's say somebody goes to Ace Hardware and purchases something for $80. Do they, are they allowed to just do that? And then they turn the receipt in? Like, how does that work?
It's kind of, there's purchasing procedures in place. I mean, for every single purchase that there's made, there's a PO issued prior.
Okay, that answers my question. Yep, thank you.
Director McKinney?
Yeah, I'm comparing the December and January treasurer's reports. I really have no concerns month to month on
Okay.
those.
Any questions from the board? All right, next agenda item. Obsolete listing, actually, let me, since we don't have the ability, I guess, to display these, I'll just group these next ones for all the obsolete listings. Does anyone have any questions about the obsolete listing for live, or for the technology listing, or for the buildings and ground listing? I'll give you just a moment to pull those up. All right, are there any questions concerning any of the obsolete listings?
Only the technology, is this done on a monthly basis where we go through the inventory and purge?
Who are you directing that question to?
Boyd?
Mr. Boyd, okay, all right.
So as we have devices that do not work anymore, do not function, find cables and stuff that we have upgraded boards, we just throw those into the obsolete listings. So it does come up. Sometimes we have something monthly. Sometimes it may not be 4, 5, 6 months until we have stuff.
Okay.
To get rid of.
There's a lot of laptops there, so I didn't know if it was a monthly.
Yeah, no, this was just kind of stuff that's been sitting around the
Okay.
the office for a little while, trying to steal parts off of. But like I said, those laptops have kind of lived outside of their means at this point.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board? Thank you, Mr. Boyd. All right, I'll group the next, I think 4 items, 525 through 528. These are all personnel actions with appointments, resignations, retirements, terminations, leaves of absence, and transfers. I guess we'll go through 5.29. Are there any questions concerning any of these? Give you a second to open them up. Any questions, comments from the board? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to agenda item 5.30, additions to the approved driver listing. They're listing in the content of the agenda item, not on an attachment, so they should be readily available. Any questions? Hearing none, we'll move on to policies 5.31, second reading for 3 policies. Policy 001, name and classification. Policy 306, employment of summer school staff. And policy 254, educational opportunity for military children, which is a new policy. Any questions or comments concerning the policy's second reading?
I have a question. I don't
Director
know.
Whitmer.
I don't know if Dr. Cartwright can answer this or not. I just was curious what prompted needing a policy for the military children. Like, did they feel like there was a gap or like a missing component to some of our other policies that didn't align with how their lifestyle or something? I was just curious about it.
You will see the same paragraph, advanced enrollment of military children, under public content for both second reading and the policies for first reading. This is what PSBA is putting out to us as their reason for this, that whole paragraph. What you see there is what they've given us. That's all I know.
There's an attachment when you open up the educational opportunity for military children. In the PDF, there's an attachment that's embedded, and it says the guidelines to implement the Interstate Compact on Educational Opportunity for Military Children. So this is apparently the result of an interstate compact between Pennsylvania and other states.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Any questions?
Do you know how many military families we actually have in our district? Is that
That is not a number I ever hear.
Okay.
And so I suppose that brings up a follow-on question. So we wouldn't know because we don't maintain those statistics.
No.
So it would be incumbent upon the family to request whatever provisions are provided for in the policy.
Absolutely.
I'm assuming they're going to probably get that information from the military itself.
I would imagine, yes.
Any other questions on policies? All right, next agenda items, minutes, 5.32 minutes of the January 9th meeting. They're in your tab for the board members. There's a link, a hyperlink in the title there that will take you to the draft copy of the minutes that will be presented for adoption at the business meeting next week. Is there any questions or concerns concerning the minutes? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next agenda item. 5.33 minutes of the January 18th board meeting. Same applies. There's a hyperlink in that title as well. That meeting was rescheduled from January 16th due to inclement weather. Any questions or comments? All right, I encourage you to review that thoroughly prior to adoption. The next one is agenda item 5.34, Independent Law Center retainer. And I'd like to read this statement prior to this. The next item on the agenda is to discuss a retainer agreement with the Independence Law Center. The purpose of this agreement is to add them as an additional counsel to our current legal team, which is made up of our solicitor, Mr. Ben Pratt, and his firm Saxton and Stump, which support us. Our solicitor has already reviewed the contract language, and we believe that ILC's legal expertise will be an asset to our district. It's important to note that this contract is for pro bono legal services, which means that there will be no cost to the district for any of the services provided by ILC. Our main objective in creating this agreement is to seek the wisest legal counsel possible to assist us in the evaluation and formulation of district policies. Our commitment to you is to operate in transparency and to communicate our commitment to serving all students, families, and staff within the district. So do you have any comments, Mr. Pratt, concerning your review of the agreement?
Just a couple to make sure everyone understands. Per your request, they forward this agreement to our office. This is not the first time we've seen this agreement. We've, from other school districts that we represent, we've made major changes to their agreement to make sure it clearly states what services they would provide us, and that the fact that the district is the one that will be requesting that it's not an automatic that they will be providing the service. It's what we need and what we request them to have do. We did make sure that it was clear as to what those services are. The original agreement was lacking a little bit of specificity, which they were agreeable to add to it, as well as the understanding, and I believe I can't remember who brought up the previous matter back in 2004. The fact of the matter is that if there are any challenges or any lawsuits filed against the school district, that our concern, from our firm's concern, was the fact that you have insurance that covers you in these types of matters, and that it would not be the Independence Law Center representing you during those matters. It would be the insurance company, because of the fact that the insurance company is the one that, if in the end something should happen, you would have to pay. The insurance company is going to do it instead of the district through their funds. The Independence Law Center understands that. They would be working in conjunction with those attorneys. They wouldn't supplant those attorneys. There is no, there's no supplanting Saxton and Stump. I mean, we obviously had a concern about that. But, you know, those are the things that we wanted to make sure that they are working with us, not to force anything on us. And that's really, you know, as we stated before, you know, some of the laws and concerns that we've had with these. And then I shared with the board as well, those laws that we discussed, so that you have them in front of you, that we will, you know, follow through with those and make sure that we implement them accordingly to the law.
Okay.
There's not going to be any forcing of the situations on the school district.
Right, and I think you brought on a very important point, and that there has been some question about this. Is this intended to supplant the solicitor and the services of the law firm Saxton and Stump? And it does not. It's not intended for that. So are there any questions from the board? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to the next agenda item. Policy readings, first reading. We have 3 policies, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Cartwright for a briefing on that, or...
Yes, you can see under public content, the changes suggested by PSBA for each of these. For 200 enrollment of students, they are adding 2 statements or sections: students experiencing educational instability and children of active duty military families. Policy 202, eligibility of non-resident students. They've also added a section under authority, except as required by law or court order, and except in accordance with law and that should say and board policy. And then there was a section added at the end of the policy, again, children of active duty military families. And for policy 217, graduation, they added the section children of active duty military families, and a statement: the superintendent shall submit to the board for its approval the names of veterans of World War II, the Korean War, and the Vietnam War who are eligible for a high school diploma. And 2 sections were deleted: class of 2020 and class of 21 and beyond. The graduation requirements have since changed, so those sections are no longer needed. And I included the advanced enrollment of military children section for all to see. That's also under the second reading policies.
Okay, any questions from the board?
I have a question on the policy on Board Policy 202. The first sentence that we added: it shall be the policy of the board not to permit the admission of non-resident students. What about the students that want to come here and participate in our CTE program? Don't we consider them students for the period of time that they're participating in the CTE program?
We will enter into an agreement with that school district specifically for that purpose, and we have done that in the past. That sentence is much more general, and that is just for any student who does not live in the district, we will not enroll.
Those are the CTE that you provide as well, just that is an agreement that you have, that you've put together, and how it's allowed under law to allow you to do that. It's the same thing when you have individuals that want to come here and want to pay tuition. They're not residents of the school district, but they're paying tuition. That's the agreements and the policies that you have. Same, you know, so it's for your students who go, I believe do you have some students that go to CTE programs elsewhere? No? Okay.
We have a
thank
couple
you.
coming here from other districts.
Right,
Pay
same
tuition.
program. They pay tuition, so that's what it is. It's ones that are non-residents who are not paying tuition, is that the ones that you're making sure are not enrolled, thus getting the appropriate credits that you get for that.
Okay, you're the legal guy.
I'm okay with it.
But when I read that,
I understand.
it seems pretty black and white.
But with anything that's black and white, there's exceptions. And those are your exceptions.
Okay, so what this hinges on is the term enrolled. So enrollment has, I suppose, a definition, right? So that these people, these students won't be enrolled, but they could still take a course here under an agreement, right?
Correct.
Is this sentence that's highlighted in the policy, is that as recommended by PSBA also?
Correct.
Okay.
The bold words are the new words.
Okay. Do we currently have any students that are enrolled here that have been enrolled with these same requirements, either by law or court order?
I would have to ask our central registrar. I don't know.
Any other questions from the board? All right, hearing none, we'll move on. This takes us to the next second public comment period. As I read before, we use the public comment period as an opportunity to listen, but not to debate issues or enter into question and answer session with the speaker. Public comment must be germane to school district business, and the board values civil, respectful statements and clear and concise communications to help to inform its deliberations. If you spoke before, you can speak again. And this time the limitation is 2 minutes instead of 3 minutes. So are there any public comments?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Nana Maria Wirtz. This is the first time I've spoken in front of you guys, but I will let you know that from what I've understood sitting there listening, you all want to know what parents, grandparents, and the community would like to see as being a part of their school system. If that is correct, there are a few things you need to know. For one, our students have been using iPads for the past 10 years. iPads are very important. It is bringing our students and keeping our students into the current century. If you go back to paper and pencil, they're going to lose out. Secondly, safety. The SROs are such an important part of the safety of our schools. Without them being there, some students may not feel as safe. These teachers took all their time tonight to make sure that they were here so that they could support not just the parents, not just the students, but you also. So I think it's important that you know it's a team effort when it comes to Dover school system. I understand that you're looking at putting some students on buses and some walkers. I'd really like to know, and Ms. Cartwright can send me the information, who's going to pay for the crossing guards to make sure the kids can cross safely to school. And the last thing is my grandson, who is a 7th grader, carries a cell phone in the bottom of his backpack. My 6th grade grandson does not. When I asked him why he didn't need one, he said, Nana, because I know we have police officers in our school who are there to protect us. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mrs. Wirtz. Anyone else?
Hello, Kara Hetrick, back again. Just a couple questions regarding Independence Law Center. I think it would help parents and families to have some more transparency from the board as to like why you picked this particular group. I think that would help people to know why. I also feel like Mr. Pratt has done a fabulous job, and I don't see any of his legal advice has been lacking, so I'm not sure why we even need additional input. But this group is problematic, and I don't feel like our district needs like more chaos. So anything you could provide with your reasoning would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hutchard. Anyone else? All right. Public comment period is closed. Now we go to comments and observations from board members. I'll start this time on the left. Next time I'll try to remember to start on this side, but we'll start with Director Wolverton.
Yeah, I'd like a 10 to 15-minute executive session with Tom and Mr. Pratt and Christina Jacoby present after this meeting.
Okay, I have your request. Matt.
It deals with a personnel action. So.
Okay. Anything else?
No.
Okay. Let's see, hold on a second. All right, Director Whitmer.
No.
Director Meese.
When it comes to recommendations for the budget and possible areas of reduction, is it typical, and Dr. Cartwright, this might be a question for you, is it typical that the board brings those recommendations? So Ms. Weaver was asking for board recommendations. Does the administration ever bring recommendations?
It depends on the district. Where I came from, the board provided a dollar amount that the board wanted the administration to reduce, and the administration brought the recommendations
Okay.
that added up to that dollar amount. So it depends on the board.
And how has this board typically, I know you've only been here a few years, but how has this board typically functioned? Even though I've been here 2 years, like wrapping my head around it, and only have done it twice. How do we typically, maybe Director Emig could help with that. How do we typically tell our administration we want a $2 million reduction in expenses, and then the administration brings recommendations, or how have we handled it in the past?
Policy of this board is to give recommendations to administration.
So actual line item recommendations, like eliminate this position and
Have anything.
if you have anything. And if we don't, because we might not have the knowledge, especially to the new directors, which there's 5, they might not have any idea what the best, scenario is there. So I think it would be helpful if the administration could bring to us some recommendations.
We can do that. We need parameters.
Parameters.
What is the board looking for?
Like a dollar value parameter?
Sure.
Or,
yes.
Okay. Thank you.
We also need to know if you're willing to raise taxes or if you want to use fund balance. Like, we need to know all the parameters.
Okay, so that's helpful. So let's get that on, if we need to come to those 3 decisions or something to help provide the parameters. Yeah, I appreciate that. That makes sense.
Well, what's important to keep in mind about that is this board has to deliberate in public. So if we're going to develop those ideas, we have to develop them in public.
Yeah, good.
So what we know now is we were presented with a $4 million deficit. It's been mitigated down to 3.4.
Correct.
So anything above 0 is going to require some form of additional revenue, which may have to come from a tax increase. So we have to deliberate. How do we accomplish that? If we're going to provide more money in the budget, we have to deliberate publicly on how we're going to accomplish that. If we're unwilling to seek additional revenue sources through taxation, we need to communicate that and decide what number we're going to ask the administration to conform to. And then they would tell us from that point what cuts are going to be required in order to accomplish that cut.
So we could say there's a $3 million deficit. So $1 million is going to come from taxes, $1 million is going to come from fund balance, and $1 million is going to come from reductions. So something like that.
Could be.
That would be our parameter suggestions.
It could be.
Yeah, that's not
Yeah.
written in stone. I'm just trying to understand, like our options.
Which is one reason why we haven't suggested any, particular cuts, in spite of, some of the buzz that's going around. We don't know what we would cut. We certainly don't want to create unintended consequences as a board that we're going to be responsible for, and accountable for. So what we need to know is the things that we don't know. The administration is has all the experts. So, in order to exercise our will, which is going to be done with a majority vote, we have to know more information, which means we have to develop questions to ask. That's one of the reasons why we've requested, access into the schools. We've participated in classroom visits in a lot of areas of the school. Not every director is taking advantage of that, but I encourage all the directors, if you have the time, to do that. We've also requested tours of the facilities to try to gain familiarity. We've had an exceptional tour of CTE by Mr. Benton, to understand what CTE is all about. There's a lot of the business of the school when you're an outsider, and you just don't know. So we're trying to familiarize ourselves with those things. Last thing we want to do is to not make good on commitments that have already been made, and to recklessly cut something out of principle, not knowing what's going to happen when we cut it. So I encourage all of us to, if you have questions, let's get them out there. Our budget deadlines, we have to have at the latest by May, we have to have an approved preliminary budget, which means in June, we have to, have a final budget proposed in order for us to approve that final budget. It's not going to be wise for us to wait until the last minute. And our learning curve is pretty steep. So as members of the public, I don't know how much, there's a lot of teachers here. You probably know a whole lot more than we do, but our learning curve is pretty steep. And the weight of this issue is weighing pretty heavily upon us. So we want to do the right thing for the right reasons. That address what you were asking? Okay. All right. Is that all you had for a comment? Okay. Director McKinney.
I just wanted to thank the public and all the teachers especially for being here and being patient with us. We're asking a lot of questions. The meetings are a lot longer than they used to be because we're just trying to be good stewards of the tax money and do our best for the students. So thank you for coming. Thank you for sticking with us as long as you did. And if you noticed, we reconfigured our seating so we could give you guys more seating because we want more people to come and support us and offer ideas. And thank you.
All right. Director McKinney. Director Kendig, I'm sorry.
I too would like to thank all the people that came out. For me, this has been a good board meeting. We got a lot of public input. Each of us may not agree with everything that was presented, but we're certainly going to take a look at it. And the fact that we had this conversation here at the end, that we, the board, need to set some criteria for the administration, and then they're going to do their thing, and we'll try and pull this together. Because as President Conley has said, this is a big learning curve for us. And we're committed to do the best we can, but there's an awful lot we got to learn, and we're trying to do that. But thank you for coming out.
Thank you, Director Eming.
Nothing, please.
Director Miller.
Do you want to hear about other meetings that we're reporting on now, or do you want to do that another time?
We'll do that in the
Okay.
next meeting, yes.
Again, thank you to everybody for coming and staying with us through this long meeting. So come again, please come again.
Okay, Director Hogan.
So I'll wait for my Dover Eagles announcement to the next meeting.
Okay.
I basically, we hear everything you said tonight. I don't recall any deliberation on eliminating any sort of safety protocol within our school district. So I was kind of taken back by the SRO comments, but there's no intent to decrease safety in any way, obviously. So hopefully that'll put some ease to mind there. And I do want to announce the track team has a new sign on the track. It has record holders going back, I think, to the 1970s. I don't know if they're in the 1960s, but it's pretty cool. So kudos to those who put that sign up. We've been looking forward to that for a while. So
So you're saying we have records that are still standing from the 70s?
well, yes, we do. Yep.
Oh.
And they're incredible.
Well, the challenge is out. Let's try to break those records.
In the gymnasium also, there's all new championship banners. They look awesome. All the way around there. We need to get more though.
Okay. Solicitor Pratt, do you have any comments?
Nothing new. Thank you.
Nothing new. All right, thank you. Dr. Cartwright.
No, thank you.
All right. I would, just in comment, I appreciate the engagement of the board and appreciate the engagement of the community. And I don't think he intended to say that when Director McKinney said we appreciate your support. We also, appreciate your diversity of opinion. You don't always agree with us, and there's a lot of things said tonight that you're concerned about things that we are doing or may be doing. We appreciate that input too. I mean, that is a natural tension that should keep us in the lane or in the middle of the road. So we want to hear that from everybody. Encourage your friends, family members, parents to come out and support the school district meetings, but also encourage everyone to support our teams, our sports teams, and our drama presentations and choral presentations. We talk a lot about Dover Pride, but it's disappointing when there's some of these ball games, there's not a lot of folks in the audience. Sometimes there's more from a visiting team. I encourage you to come out. Even when we're not winning all the games, please come out. And that's about all I have for tonight, but thank you once again for coming. Future meeting announcements. We have a meeting next week, this same time. Public meeting starts at 7 p.m. That is the official business meeting. So tonight, what you observed and participated in was a planning meeting. We didn't take any votes. We never vote during a planning meeting. It's still considered an open public meeting, which we are deliberating and asking questions. During the business meeting, depends on how it goes, there may be actually less deliberation than was tonight because we've already asked a lot of questions and they may be answered all tonight. So we will bring up these very same agenda items. We'll go through them. And if there's no comments or concerns, it goes straight to a vote, and it's all voted electronically unless we call for a voice vote or otherwise. So I encourage you to be at those meetings as well. Is there any other comments or concerns from the board before I ask for an adjournment? All right, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Director McKinney moves that we adjourn. Is there a second? Well,
Second.
You seconded it before there was a
Sounded
motion.
like you
Is there
made the motion.
What's that?
Did you make the motion?
No, I said I would entertain a
Okay.
motion to adjourn.
Okay, then I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Director McKinney moves to adjournment. Is there a second?
This is a second.
Director Wolverton seconds the motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Motion carries. We're adjourned.